has?
No, the foothill.
I mean, the
Foothill.
foothill.
Is it okay?
All right.
Everything back.
Good afternoon. The Design Review Board number 2 public meeting of February 21st, 2008 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off and put on vibrate all cell phones, pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards and one of these speaker cards that is provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or to speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration appeals is available at the table by the front door. And the chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Aliano.
Here.
Board Member Simonian.
Here.
Board Member Yu.
Here.
Board Member Insua.
Here.
We'd like to greet Board Member Insua back to the Design Review Board Forum. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And in regards to report regarding posting of agenda, the agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on February 14th, 2008. Because we do not have a chairperson at this time, we'd like the board to actually nominate a chair pro tem until one is nominated officially. So at this point, do I have a nomination for chair pro tem?
I wanted to nominate R. Simonian.
Thank you.
Second.
Second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Chairman Pro Tem Simonian, would you mind taking your seat
Move
at the
one
center
over.
of the dais? And you are now responsible for the gavel as well. So, remember you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to call this evening's Design Review Board meeting to order, and the date is February 21st of 2008. We've actually shifted today's agenda, and first case will be the Figueroa property. So with that, I'd like to start case number 1-PDR-2007-135-A, 3585 Figueroa Street. And would staff like to start with their presentation, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. The project before you with the case number PDR 2007-135 is located at 3585 Figueroa Street. This consists of addition of 683 square foot of living area to an existing 1,624 square foot single-family, single-story residence on 9,020 square foot of lot in R1R floor area ratio District 3. The project will not increase the number of stories or the height of the existing building. No major grading due to the gentle slope of the site is expected as a result of the new addition. The street front setback on the Figueroa Street side will be reduced slightly, and although a more noticeable decrease is proposed on the side of St. Elizabeth, of St. Elizabeth, the setback remains within their compliance with the zoning code and appear compatible with the neighborhood. The house will be modestly larger as a result of proposal. Houses located on Figueroa Street range in size from 1,624 to 5,431. The proposed house will be 2,307 square feet. The scale of the proposed house will be similar to the surrounding houses, which are mostly one-story with garages facing the street. The proposed addition is located on the northeast corner of the site, which is visible from both Figueroa Street and St. Elizabeth. An entry court with a width of 1250 feet leading to the main entrance door is created as a result of the proposed addition. The existing two-car garage will remain intact. Currently, a portion of the site is covered in dirt. The applicant has noted on the site plan the extent of landscape proposed. Architectural style of the existing single-story family dwelling is a modified ranch and with an attached garage facing the street. No change to the style is proposed. The neighboring properties are mostly ranch with spread out layout and single-story. There are few contemporary and minimal traditional homes. The proposed addition will match the existing house in color, material, height, and style, therefore appears as an integrated part of the existing building. Staff recommend approval of the project with the following conditions. Design of the entry court and the portion of the site currently covered in dirt shall incorporate additional landscaping. The landscape guideline shall be incorporated in the choice of the plan and design of the landscape. Since the additional landscaping will be minimal, landscape plan shall be submitted to staff for review and approval. And this concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, we'd like to answer.
Do we have any more questions for staff? Thank you. I have one card from the audience, and it's the applicant, Laura Serter. And if you would please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Laura Serdar, 942 Willadonda, La Cañada, and I'm the architect. The rendering for the project is over in the corner. The only thing I could add to Jalet's presentation is that the existing house currently is sited to the rear of the property, and that's why this addition is proposed to the front corner. And I open that to questions for you.
Do we have any
I think it's
questions
pretty
for the
straightforward.
applicant?
No? Very well. I think the site dictates a lot of it, so.
Well, I had a question, actually. The
Sure.
hip lights, chimney, here, right?
Correct.
So
I missed the
actually-
poche. Yeah. We could wipe that part out.
And why is there another line here? Are you intending to put a valley there? Seems like that's a pitch and this whole thing here.
I was cricketing that right there because I thought that if I went straight back, I'd end up with a pond right at the intersection.
I kind of did a sketch that may
Did I
help the
miss it?
framing.
Thank you.
I think that and I wasn't going to bring it up, I was just going to undercover.
Yeah.
I think that I think it'll also match the hip valleys that you have on the adjacent one, and I think it'll simplify this little area by framing it like that.
Perfect.
But
I
was just going to.
would, I would love to take that into
I think put a
consideration.
tool belt on many a times. Framing is an interesting thing. Anyway. No questions.
Yeah, I think this will probably cross straight. And now it's at 45, so. Okay, that's the only thing. And then your windows are matching.
They would be the same aluminum that the existing house has. Although all the doors are wood, so we would match wood doors to wood doors and aluminum windows to aluminum windows.
And
Metal.
is there any paneling on the door?
Pardon?
Is there any paneling in this door, or is it just horizontal?
I think it was just the horizontal. That's the existing garage door. You could see it up in the top picture.
Let's see what we got. Well, the pictures show horizontal. Might be paneled as well, it's hard to tell. It's actually paneled.
Yeah, it's right, oh, it shows here, but it shows. But you're keeping it, right? You're just repainting it.
Right.
What about the front doors?
That's to remain.
I have a few questions. Looking at the home, I couldn't quite tell if there were aluminum windows or vinyl windows because I was parked at the curb. And you stated they're aluminum windows?
They're metal windows, so I'm guessing that's an aluminum. They're a Milgard window right now. They're not the Milgard vinyl.
I see. Very good, because the elevations indicated metal window, and then you said aluminum. And so is the idea basically to match
Yeah, they
the
would all
existing
be
windows as much
Milgard
as...
to match the existing.
And I noticed that the north elevation, which is the St. Elizabeth elevation, does not have openings. In fact, it's just pretty much a blank wall. Was there, what was the thought process behind that?
It does have a proposed door, and it's just a wall to have the bed on it. So we had some wall.
Do you plan on fencing off that area to basically you have these porch doors, these French doors that open up? Is there going to be a side yard created there?
We had looked at that with kind of the site plan, but I think we're encroaching in the setback, so the fence needs to remain where it is right now, which is at the back of the addition.
So the existing fence is going to remain, and the new doors that you're adding
Will be
are basically just
exposed.
inside the
Right, and they're
fence?
for a sitting area to have a little bit more light and windows in there.
And has a landscape drawing been presented?
It has not, and that was Chalet's recommendation, that from after this meeting, that we have the landscape design done and present it to staff. The homeowner had taken out most of the landscaping about a year ago, anticipating the project would go a little faster, so it's been sitting ready.
Okay, well, I don't have any more questions, and I think everybody else has asked their questions as well. So with that, I'd like to close the...
Can I ask one more?
Of course.
This 18.4, is that a required?
No, the required is
Minimum 15.
15 feet.
Minimum 15. 15 is the required.
All right, thank you.
So with that, we'd like to close the public portion of the hearing, and then we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves. Mr. Insua, do you want to go first?
I think that, the architect has designed, and the exterior of the home in keeping with what's currently there. The similar materials, same window, manufacturing and style. When I look at the site plan, as it was said, that's really driving how this thing expands. And the only really comment that I have is to simplify the framing plan just to what it is right now, so that it matches more of the other ones. But I think it's done well.
Okay. Mr. Yu?
I think that when you first look at it, you sort of see that you're adding a whole bedroom suite, and it happens to be in the front of the house, and so that's pretty peculiar. But I think looking at the site, it is sort of one of the very few places where you can add on to and go that way. And one good thing about it is that there is a large sort of bush on the corner too, so it masks some of that and gives you a little bit of privacy too on that side. As you're coming up the street on Figueroa, it probably won't have much of an impact to that corner. You'll barely see the roofs as you're coming up, so I think it works well. I would just maybe say, I'm kind of wondering, I guess, what you're going to do sort of in that little courtyard area in the entry. Probably do something really nice there. I'm not going to tell you what to do with it, but I think you can come up with something nice there. All in all, I think you're keeping with and the house is very well maintained, and I say great job by the owner. So I'm ready to approve it as is. So.
Mr. Aliano?
Yeah, I wanted to comment, obviously, but I wanted to ask one more question. Is there, I'm sure I know the answer, but I won't. If this is 18.4 and you maintain, you have to be at least 15 feet, was there any reason, I guess, look at the plan, you probably don't want a block light here. Why not taking advantage of this area, maybe making this room a little bigger, taking some of that out, maybe lining that up with this, so that this becomes one large area. Because what that does, it only adds a few more square feet. It doesn't look like you're going to have a problem with square footage. It might allow you to get the roof line to work out a little bit nicer. The only concern I have with this, and I agree with all the comments, is how all this comes together here. It looks like an addition, and that's not integrated.
I think it works out good.
This actually, so to eliminate this cricket right here,
Yeah, I don't think you
you
need
just
that.
framed it like that. There's no cricket and everything just flows in natural valleys and stuff, which helps it.
Yeah.
So, Julia, your suggestion is, I didn't quite understand it. Do you propose to
Well,
move that wall in a little
No,
bit?
if you add another more square feet in, in other words, make it a larger addition, you could perhaps get some of this roof to come out further out, to create another hip maybe down here. I think I don't know, I would have to probably sketch over it, but it seems like that you might be able, similarly, the way it was done on this side, once you bring a hip this way and something attaches to it, you actually start bringing these planes around. It would be nice if you could do something similar here. You brought this corner to say halfway, brought it to this wall, say. You're almost past the midpoint. So once you have this other area here, you could actually continue this ridge, and then it shifts kind of similar to that. Creates a smaller hip here, as this, right? You have a hip there as well. Once you do that, I think it allows you a little more flexibility there. That's something that I would look at, but I'm not going to stop the project because of that. I just wanted to see if there was an opportunity if there was an interest in adding more square footage.
We did look
spending
at more
money.
square footage and kind of downscaled a little because we got some bids on that. So it would have been nice to have a bigger sitting room. So I absolutely appreciate what you're saying. However, a little bit too much on the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, and I believe Ms. Reich actually wanted to ask something, but she's shaking her head saying no. So I guess with that now, we'll just close the public portion again. As far as my thoughts are concerned on this project, it's a prominent corner. And so when you're driving up Figueroa, you get to see this home, especially when you add to it, that corner will become somewhat prominent. Currently, there is a natural hedge that's camouflaging most of the home. And if that hedge is to stay, then a lot of what's going to occur now won't be visible. However, we're not sure what the landscaping is and if that is going to stay or not. So I'm assuming that hedge won't be there, perhaps. And so I'm looking at this design as to what it would look like without a hedge there and so forth. And it's a modest addition, and it's an addition that's as the applicant has stated, is to occur with a budget in mind. And so the only thought really I had was the St. Elizabeth elevation, which is the corner, which is this elevation here, which is going to be the visible corner when you're driving up, is very barren. It could use some articulation. And the other comment I had was the bay window just kind of seemed odd as to why it was placed there. As far as the bay window is concerned, it's not really tying into anything on the facade, but at the same time, it seems a little odd to me. So those were my two comments, and it seems as though the board is somewhat happy with the design. But those were two thoughts I had as to maybe some possible improvements on the design, especially in light of since we don't have a landscape drawing in front of us.
A question,
Mr. Insula.
Ma'am, is this
Open the
wall
public
right
portion again,
here
if you would step up to the
proposed
podium.
bed wall where you're putting the bed?
Yes.
So I mean, I can see the logic a little bit of why that doesn't have more windows, and I agree. So, because that's going to be the bed wall, you don't want to have a lot of windows.
However, we could add
Side
ribbon
lights.
window
side
or a
windows
top.
by the
That would be a bad
nightstands.
idea, too, yeah.
Kind of like the bay window for a sitting area.
I see, I see. So would you be open to adding a window on either side of the bed or a ribbon window up
Okay
top?
with that?
Okay, maybe that's something we could just make a condition and approve the project. I see Mr. Aliano is sketching some
Right
roof
back.
diagrams, and Mr. Insua has had some roof diagrams as well.
I'm sure they'll be more than happy to add the square footage if you pitch in for that, so.
Well, I'm thinking, I don't know if it could be done without adding square footage. If you could just add a roof and create a porch, a covered porch.
That would also make that corner really big too, though, as you're coming out.
See, what I was trying to, she was trying to get this plane to tie, kind of like it's done on this side, because this corner is,
They do have a porch out back with a terrace above it. That's something that could be tied into with what Mr. Aliano is thinking, but I think you're thinking more of a solid roof.
me.
Yeah.
I was thinking of extending this plane to there. So that this becomes a ridge.
Careful with an architect
Yes,
and pens in their hands.
I'd
There's
like to make a
dangerous business.
friendly suggestion,
Yes.
that if there is a particular issue with the roof, if it's minor enough, if we understand the concern, one idea is that we could work with the applicant and resolve that issue with the applicant, rather than trying to do it in a meeting, which is maybe a difficult forum for that.
Don't mind me, I'm just thinking.
Well,
I'm
I'd like
okay
to
with
make a-
approving it, but I agree. I think
I'd like to
if we
make
can
a,
address this roof issue, if you can work with the applicant to get it to be more integrated with what's there already, because it seems that it's chopped there. It doesn't seem like integrated with the rest of the roof. I would just suggest just extend the roof, because that's one way to make the roof longer and be able to tie into that other ridge. But I agree, I don't think we can solve it in this meeting, and I think we should have the staff.
well, maybe, Mr. Aliano, you could hand over your sketch.
Well, I
and,
don't wanna design it for
Same with
them. I was just
Mr.
thinking-
Insua, it could be some suggestions that they take a look at.
Well, I think this is
Yeah,
a
I
good
think-
solution for them to consider. It's just a framing issue. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I'd like to make a, what's that called again? I forgot. I've purged things in my mind.
A motion?
Motion, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the project as submitted with one condition and one consideration.
It'd actually be to approve the project with, unfortunately, with conditions and considerations.
Okay.
So,
I think if we understood the architect correctly, they would be willing to break up that solid wall, 2 windows on either side, which I'd suggest windows C, which are 2 by 4/8, so that they turn the corner on either side, and then you can still put your bed wall in. Other than that, I'm happy, and I think that the suggestions that Gio has with the roof framing, simplifying it, making it save some money there, and so you can eliminate the cricket. But my condition is putting those 2 windows on either side. I think it'll be perfect.
Your second.
Very good.
Okay, this is Mr. Aliano,
Yes.
Mrs. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Insua,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian.
Yes.
There are one condition and one, I should have done it before. The condition is to position 2 windows on the side of the bay window, and the consideration is to simplify roof plan to match to make the framing work.
The 2 windows go on the bedroom wall, on the St. Elizabeth bedroom wall.
All right.
And the suggestion is using window type C.
North elevation.
Okay.
And for the record, the applicant has stated that she's going to match the existing windows.
Right, yes.
So we're going to pass down the roof diagrams, or diagram.
Well, I,
Thank you.
Very good. Our second case
Do you want to take it?
Second case is 1 PDR-2007-132-A, 2612 Piedmont Avenue.
The next project before you with the case number PDR 2007-132A is located at 2612 Piedmont. This consists of demolition of the existing single-story, single-family residence and a detached garage and construction of two-story detached homes with attached garages to both and an attached one-car garage on 7,250 square feet lot in R3050 zone. The existing house is typical of craftsman style, built in Glendale during 1920s. The historic preservation planner has reviewed the demolition of the existing house, and due to its lack of significant character-defining features, the conclusion is that it will not be considered a historic resource under CEQA and is not eligible for listing on the Glendale Register. Therefore, the project is exempt. The building will be 26.5 feet at their highest point, with 25 feet street front setback. The front unit will be 1,646 square feet, and the back unit will be 2,027 square feet. The proposed house will be set by 5 feet back relative to the existing home to provide the required 25 feet street front setback. The adjacent houses are in line with the existing house. The space between the proposed houses is being utilized as required common open space. The proposed articulation in the walls and multi-level roof result in buildings that appear modest in size and style. The second story on the unit facing the street is a step back by about 4 feet. The neighborhood contains a variety of styles, including craftsman, ranch, and contemporary style. The proposed contemporary Spanish style, although not overtly present in the neighborhood, is well suited to the eclectic nature of the neighborhood. Overall, this two-unit project is well sited and of an appropriate mass and scale. These are the house. For neighborhood, the style is consistent throughout the project with appropriate details, quality material. Staff recommend approval of the project with the following conditions. Windows on the north front or the front east and west elevation of Unit A, which is, to be recessed by 1.5 to 2 inches. And that's the unit on the street side.
I'm sorry, you pointed to Unit B. Unit B or Unit A?
Unit A, which is this one, and
The top one.
I'm sorry, that's the one. But here,
And what the suggestion is what? Sorry?
to have the windows on the front and the sides of that unit, which are visible from the street, to be recessed by 1.5 to 2 inches. The second suggestion is windows to be added to the Unit B front elevation at the first floor level, which would be to the side of the garage, and that would be facing this open space, which is utilized as common open space. The last point is all the entry arches to be made flatter for consistency with the proposed architectural style. These are and the two main one on the street front, and the applicant.
So you're saying not a semicircle, but more like a radius?
More like an oval. Yes. And that concludes my presentation. Any question, I'll be glad to answer.
So is the idea to provide some windows in here, in this
More
area?
in here, actually. Because that's the blank wall,
Yes.
and we think it makes it more pleasant for the all common open space to have some kind of window rather than a blind.
Which would be on the first floor plan over there.
Right. It would be to the side of the garage. Here is the common of
Yes.
This is the garage, and this is where we're proposing the windows.
The windows on the garage to.
Right. And the elevation is
right
be
there.
here. This wall.
Do we have any more questions for staff? No? Thank you. The only card we have is the architect, Franco Naranyan.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Franco Noravian. I'm the architect for the project. 409 West Broadway, Glendale, California, 91204 is my address. This area consists of a lot of single-family homes, but it's zoned multifamily. And on that side of the street, there is currently an existing multifamily and then one under construction. I don't know if it helps you, but I did a panoramic view of all the homes on that side of the street, just so you can see the relationship of the homes. The 2620, the house that you can tell from the picture, it's under construction. There's construction in the back. That's the two-unit one that's currently under construction. Next door to it, I'm actually the architect also for that one, 2616 Piedmont. That one was approved by the board about 4 months ago, and it's ready to go, almost ready to go plan check. And the project we have today is 2612 Piedmont, which as far as the conceptual plan is very similar to the one next door. The small 2 units, 2 detached single-family homes, the smaller one in the front with a 2-car garage, and a larger one in the back with a 3-car garage. But I wanted them to look completely different, and so I've made changes, minor changes to the floor plan, and played around with the roof and the materials so that they look different. If you are wondering why, or if I did consider putting the garage from the back, creating like a motor court area and accessing the garage from the back, but that doesn't work, unfortunately. For the previous project, 2616, I had submitted a plan like that, and that was didn't meet the zoning requirements as far as how you get into your garage. From what I understand, I guess you cannot make a U-turn to come back into your garage. You have to go straight in. So the only way to make a two detached unit work on the site is to make it front-loaded, like I have done. Let's see. One more thing. I mean, as an architect, I agree with the staff's recommendations of recessing the windows. I do have to say, as my client's representative, that does cost more, and so he would, if you look at the rest of the homes in the area, and if you don't think that absolutely necessary, then you would prefer not to do that. But if you think it is, then we'll. I understand that it's just a little bit more, but the house at 2616, I keep getting them mixed up, has vinyl windows. And I told my client, well, with your house, we have to do wood windows. We're proposing Integrity, which is a fiberglass-clad wood window. And so that was a little bit more cost, but he agreed to that. But so now recessing it would be an additional cost. But again, if you think that's necessary, we'll be happy to comply.
And how do you feel about adding some windows on that open space area in the middle and also the arches?
The arches I'm okay with. I think that's a good suggestion because the house is not, really, although it has some Spanish elements and a little bit of a Spanish flavor, it's not really Spanish, and the completely round arches are Spanish. So I think I even submitted a sketch with the flat arches,
Yes.
which you can take a look at, and I think it looks good with the flat arches. The windows in the common space, I'd rather not do it because it's just a garage, and I mean we have a landscape. I think we have some landscaping in front of. I don't think the windows would really do anything. But again, if you like to have them, we'll be happy.
Maybe instead of a window, you see a lot of that where there's like a recessed aspect of this wall, like maybe half an inch, 2 inches, where there's a little depth
The relief.
to it, so that you can put in a lot of landscaping grow within that, so to break up that flat wall. Not a window because it's garage, but something to give you the less of the blank wall there.
Right. Sure.
Do we have any more questions for applicant?
Just one question.
Mr. Yu?
Can you just talk me through a little bit of the way you colored some of the faces and
Oh yeah.
what kind of decided, like which face was what color and those kinds of things? Just walk me through it.
Sure. I wanted to break up the massing by using two different colors. And I realized looking at it from here, the elevations, the colors seem a little bright, but look at the sample board. Those will be the actual colors. So the yellow is not as bright as it appears on the elevations. I don't have any outside corners. Whenever I'm doing a color, I take it and it stops on an inside corner. So it's just to break up the mass. That there's no other reason other than to just break up the mass. Because on the house that we did at 2616, we used two different materials. It's siding and stucco. But in this case, since we're only using stucco, it was a way to break up the mass to make it look smaller. One more thing, if I forgot to mention this. As far as the house next door at, I don't know what the address is, but it will be to the east, which is a single, to the left.
Okay.
That's a single-family home, but it's a single-story home, but its driveway, it has a garage, detached garage in the back, so that we don't, even though we are a two-story, the majority of the two-story is on the right side, plus the neighbor has a driveway on that side, so I think there shouldn't be any impact to that neighbor. Of course, our driveway is on the right side, and that provides a separation from the neighbor to the right.
Mr. Aliano, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the...
I actually do have a couple if I can. And actually, this is just discussion, but Franco, you can help. I've purged a little bit of what I used to remember, so I'll ask a couple questions. Don't we need a professionally done landscape plan for multi-unit?
Yes, they have
Projects?
provided.
Okay, well, it wasn't in my packet. Okay, so that's what threw me. All right, so that's the first question. And let me study that a little bit. Okay, Franco, can you help me understand why you have in Unit B a single-car garage and then a double-car garage?
Because it's required. When you go over 1,600 square feet, you have to provide a three-car garage.
And we are currently how much?
22 or
22. Okay.
I'm not sure, but something like that.
Because my thinking is it's already a small lot.
Yeah, I know.
And and one of my first impression is that there's a lot going on mass-wise, size-wise, in a relatively small lot. But we'll discuss that. Okay. So we have a landscape plan. Good. Wasn't in my packet. This one's probably for staff. Our entry apron into the property, how wide does that have to be minimum? Frank, you probably know. You do them all.
10 feet?
So the front apron right here, wherever it is on this, how wide does this have to be by code?
9 feet, if it
We can
includes the
reduce
one.
this?
Well, yes and no, because you also have to be able to get in. See, in this case, I have to have a driveway going to the back unit, and I also need a driveway to get to the.
Right, but
Right.
is there a way that we could come in here and then turn it? I know we're pinching in here. We'll talk about this because
Right.
there's just a lot of hardscape,
Right.
especially see it on this thing.
Right.
I mean, There's a lot of hardscape in here, and if we can reduce it, landscaping in here, so. Okay.
If I can make a suggestion for 2620 Piedmont. That's not the one immediately to the right, but the one that's under construction right now. You can see in that picture. There was a suggestion made to put a landscaping strip, a 3-foot wide
Right.
landscape strip down the middle of the driveway, and that we can.
So it'd
something
be more
that.
like a PUD, like a plan unit development.
Right.
So when you look at it, it'll all have one sort of look, even though they're built at different times and approved at different time, it'll all look
Right.
as one development, if we get that landscaping strip there.
Right. Well, yeah, it just cut down on the amount of hard surface that you see.
Mr. Narabi, your landscape plans that are on the board over here,
Uh-huh.
is there some sort of a grass or landscaping apron around Unit A in the front around the garage portion? Because the perspective shows hardscape, and then the landscaping shows some sort of maybe landscape area. Yeah, you could approach, please, come on up. Yeah, so I'm wondering, what is this? Is this some sort of a landscape area?
No. That's the lower floor, and this is the upper floor. This is the line of the garage. This
I
is the
see.
second floor.
I see.
So no, unfortunately, the only landscape we have is on that side.
And what's the setback, the side yard setback between the lower garage and the property line? What is this over here?
Oh, that's 10 feet.
10 feet.
Yeah. That's right.
What was the trigger from square footage wise? 16
Well, 3 bedrooms in a single family. Which
makes it a 3-bedroom, and a single family makes it a 3-car. You have to put a 3-car garage in.
Yes, and they do have 3 a 3-bedroom in one and 2 in the other.
So the trigger is 3-bedroom and a square footage issue to it.
Well, yes.
There's no square footage issue in multifamily residential
3 bedrooms.
zones. If you have a structure that has 3 bedrooms, you're required to provide a 2.5 parking garage, which unfortunately rounds up to 3.
Right.
The previous square footage that Board Member Inso remembers, the 1,600 square foot threshold, that has been eliminated from our zoning code.
Okay, so it's the 3-bedroom.
Do all 3 have to be covered?
They would have to be within an enclosed garage, so no carports are not permitted.
And does the applicant have to, is this going to be for rent or for sale? Do you have to provide guest parking in this?
No guest park. With 2 units, no guest park. 4 units.
Well, I have no more questions for the applicant. Mr. Yu?
No, I'm okay.
That concludes the public portion of the hearing, so we're going to discuss the projects amongst ourselves. Mr. Yu, care to start?
Sure. I like the design in the sense that it is attempting to break up the mass of it, and it is a large mass, especially in the back unit. The colors, you're right. As once we look at the board, it's not as contrast as between the 2 colors as it is on the renderings. So I think that's good. It's more subtle. But I do have concerns about that rear unit. It is excessively big in that lot. I know it's going to be a little bit hidden just because the slope does tend to go down towards the back. But I think for the neighbors that are joining on either side, it is going to feel quite big in that area. And I think that sort of picture collage, I think that kind of shows how big it is compared to the existing houses there. And the only elevation that I wanted to sort of discuss was just And this one here, where all the rest of them were really kind of looking at the side of the roof, where the tile is. But I think this one, especially facing the neighbor, has a very large face to it. And so I would maybe suggest that you maybe kick back the roof to provide a little more daylighting into the next site. Yeah, I think. And I mean, it's easily done unless you're going to vault the space underneath it or something. But
Are you referring to unit A or
B.
B in the back?
Yeah, just because.
B on the east elevation.
Yeah, how all of these you're looking at the sides and. You know, but that one sort of has a large face that comes up right at the adjacent property.
Which I think is this point, this elevation is this elevation. So this is where you want to have some relief.
No, I was referring to the roof line. Back. So you're not looking at the face of
Oh, I
it.
see. The other side, right? The other side.
The side of it, yeah.
Correct, okay.
But, so I think those are my concerns for now. So,
Charliano?
Thank you. I think we've done a pretty good job in getting these buildings, which would otherwise look fairly large, the way you kind of brought in the edges and trying to carve certain corners. There are some areas that I think I still feel to me like they're just kind of bursting out. They want to be smaller, but you need to have them bigger because otherwise your plan won't give you what you want. And so I'm kind of torn because I understand programmatic needs, but at the same time, I think the massing needs another level, I think, of fine-tuning. I'm talking, I'll give you some examples. You know, area here. You know, the difference between this plane and that plane is very small. Almost looks like something that's missed. And you can, this elevation being that elevation, you have the same thing here. It's just a slight overhang, but then these kinds of conditions end up being very fussy, and they're so small that you're going to end up with a lot of flashing and a lot of, you know, stuff there, and you will lose the quality there. You know, and I know why you can't do it. You need to be that big, otherwise. But if you can worry about that too much for a second, that's really where the wall wants to stop, you know, where that line meets the plank, so that then now you have a really more drastic variation in plan. So I'm sort of zeroing on that. You know, these kinds of conditions, it's sort of it has a Spanish feel because you're doing corbels. It's not just, when you look at this actually, it's traditional, but it has sort of a stripped down look. It doesn't have all the details of a traditional Spanish style. It's simplified and seems to work, but then when you start adding corbels, then you get into more traditional language, and then you got to follow the rules, right? I mean, and that's where I think, you know, stuff like that, you know, hanging something on both sides. Here there's no corbel, there's just corbels on the other side. So these kinds of things are, to me, they're troubling, but they're not the kinds of things that destroy the project. I'm more concerned about the overall mass and what kind of impact it has, and I think to me it's not doing harm in terms of mass, but looking at it from an architect's perspective, which I'm sure you are as well, I'm looking at these kinds of details which could soften it a little bit more. And the other comment I have is that I don't think you need to really change the color. I I think it should be all one color. And you could do maybe one unit with a subtle difference in color, and the other unit could be another color. But because it has a sort of, it's trying to be modern in a sense, because you're saying, okay, this is one element kind of wraps around, then you have these cubes that kind of insert it. But when you try to understand the whole project, it isn't really about that, you know. It's really more about this mass that's been kind of carved and shaped, and it's not about the sort of cubes that are coming in and out. So I wouldn't go with a two-tone scheme on each building. I would just keep one tone for each building. And again, as I said, if you want to change the color of one of them, make it contrasting, I think that's fine. You know, I like the ridge, not the ridge, but the pitch of the roofs. I think in the end, when you're standing in front of these buildings, you're not going to see that much roof, just because of the way the pitch is done. And one last comment on the roof is that, and we see this a lot, and I don't know what to do about it, because to me, one has to choose when you're doing these kinds of buildings whether you're going to go with hips or gables. I don't think, to me, it's correct to mix the two. You know, you're mixing gables and hips, and it sort of becomes this kind of schizophrenic building. It doesn't know what it wants to be. So, again, those are sort of, in a sense, minor things, but they could contribute tremendously to the success of the project. So that's all I have. And I'm glad you're using wood windows. And I'm glad you're not using double hung windows. I like the casement style and the fixed window style. I think it's more appropriate for this building.
Thank you. Mr. Insua? Okay, well, first of all, Frank always does a great job, so in keeping with always doing good work, Franco. I got some questions, though, for staff. I hear that when we put a three-bedroom unit, we have to go through three-car garage. Can at least two of those be in tandem? Can we have a tandem garage design?
One of them can be tandem. I mean, they have to have two which are not tandem, but the third one can be.
Okay, so we have a two-car garage opening, and the one on my right, for example, I have a car, and then directly behind this car can be a tandem. Okay. I'm going to try to gather my thoughts. I think that we have a relatively small lot in a neighborhood in which the prominent defining features are single-family homes, even though Franco is doing the one next door. I think we should be sensitive to the vertical mass and the overall bulk of these new homes, or actually they're duplexes here now, going in. So thinking at it from that way, with respect to the garage, I would like to see if the applicant could work out a way where you could have the garages clustered and then have them in a tandem design if possible. I think if you can do that, you'll be able to get more of the landscaping, more of the site back to potential landscaping, potential patios, that perhaps if you could, get a little orientation, you may be able to get a three-car garage with a two-garage profile. People are going to still park in the driveway anyway, but at least I think the overriding effort for here is trying to reduce the size of these units in this particular location, in this particular site. And if you could do that, I think that could be a winner. I know that it's who wants to move cars and stuff, but I don't think people use cars in garages that much anymore. And again, given the location, I think there's some more premium put on site usage and good site planning, that if it could be utilized, I think that would work. So I would think that would be something that should be explored a little bit more, especially when we're building two. This is now a commercial endeavor, if you will. When you're trying to put two, they need a little bit more time to get them right, I believe, instead of just, okay, this is our first attempt. I think they need a little bit more effort. My second question is on Unit A. What is our side yard setback for Unit A? It currently is being 10'8". What's minimum?
On the first floor is minimum 20, and the average, I'm sorry, this is
That's the
30,
front
50, is 25 minimum.
Right, and then how about the side yard? Side yard over here, what's the minimum? Franco, you
There
probably
is a
know.
5 and a 8 minimum and average.
An average with
Okay, and what would that be in your?
But we can't have
about
cross
eight?
conversations, though. The applicant, we could open up the public hearing, and we could invite him up if you want to ask him some
The
questions.
reason I mention it, that's okay. The reason I mention it is that for me, it's how these units sit on this site, and then what's left over for better landscaping, less reduction of hardscape, perhaps increasing the common area, increasing potential private patios. Perhaps a thing that can be explored is that this driveway, if you notice, is relatively wide, and there's a lot of hardscapes here. We have a long driveway here where we have some planter wells here. Well, what if this home was able to shift a little bit? Perhaps what we can do in this area, if we reduce the driveway, it's already been shifted to the property, so it's already close to this guy's property. Perhaps maybe we could incorporate a landscape area in here so that you don't see down that bowling alley all the way down as we're seeing it here. And if we were able to maybe shift this unit a little bit, perhaps we could put in a landscape planter along the side there that you could have some plant material growing up. Again, softening up that long look of driveway all the way to the back. Again, primarily it's a single family or lower squat development. I think whatever we can do to try to nestle this in better, I think it would be it's worth the effort, especially since we're building 2 brand new units. So that's another area I think that we could explore. And if we do that, we may be able to introduce a little landscaping along the house here, which may be what we're doing here. This looks like grass area or whatever. In other words, trying to blend in less concrete, less stamped concrete, less pavers, all wonderful things, but there's a point where it just becomes overwhelming. We see this image right here, that unless we can landscape this area here and bring in these little nooks and crannies of green area, it's still going to be a lot of hardscape. So when I look at these images, I see opportunities here. One that I thought was that we could split this driveway maybe and put a center berm, a little bit of landscape, but that was with the old landscape plan. Now it's a little different, so this is fine. And again, for me, minimizing the bulkness of the building, minimizing its footprint, working with the relatively small lot, and then increasing. The architecture's fine. Franco always does wonderful work, and with some of the comments that we've had, but really putting a little bit more effort in the what's around it, what's on that site. And then in closing, I think that this is a little bit out of scale. It's a little tall compared to here. I think if we reduced it, maybe made it a 1-story profile or a 1.5 stories, it'll have less prominence on the corner. If you notice with this, first thing you look at is that right there. And for me, it looks a little out of scale from what we have here. So anyway, those are some of the comments that I have. But other than that, it's going in the right direction, and so on.
Thank you, Mr. Insua. I tend to agree with most of the discussion that's occurred, and without reiterating a lot of the comments that were made, I'd like to start off by emphasizing that I too had an issue with the color, with the dual colors, and especially on a smaller home like this, in a quiet street. Once you go down the dual color scheme, it becomes very loud and it tends to jump out at you. Initially, when I saw your perspective with that pistachio light green color, I thought that was the final color, and I thought that was quite nice, where the front unit and the back unit have a similar color to it. And I think that's the correct approach, as Mr. Aliano touched on it, is that since the rear unit is larger, it tends to stick out farther. So as you're looking at the home in the front, you're going to see the structure in the back as well. And if they're similar hues and if they're similar colors, that will help with the massing and bulk as well. This is a multi-zoned property, and I think based on the general plan and so forth, the city's encouraging multifamily on this. So I don't have an issue, nor do I think it's a problem to have this duplex. And I think some of the comments that are being presented about the rear unit as far as its size is more pertaining to the garage layout as opposed to square footage of the rear unit. And I think there's some ways that you could perhaps take a look at rearranging the parking on Unit B as perhaps Mr. Insua has pointed out, where the eastern garage, where the single garage starts maybe getting integrated into the kitchen area as well, and then you end up having your 3 cars in that area with 1 garage door. And that would certainly create less garage massing, as you might put it, and a more pleasant common area in the middle. So I think that's a good thought as well. And very easily, I think Mr. Aliano's thoughts about pulling back some of the wall on Unit B facing the courtyard on the second level could be achieved by switching around your bathroom and so forth. Maybe reducing the size of that laundry room will alleviate some of that bulk. And so all in all, I think the design is fairly well and it's thought out. It just needs to be massaged a bit, especially with some of those corbels and so forth that we've already touched upon. And so that's based on the discussion that we're going to have, I guess. We can make some recommendations for the urban designer to work with architect on this, focusing in on some of these thoughts. As far as Mr. Insua's thoughts as well, I think those could be easily worked out with Unit A moving a little bit to the west, and that's because we have there is this private patio, but if this unit moves out west, as Mr. Insua is pointing out, this area could start acting as a private patio. Therefore, we'll have some relief on the driveway, and we could have some landscaping, along the property line and maybe next to the home as well. So that could easily be accomplished without shifting anything, and then this unit could actually have an access into the patio from its from this location. So I think all in all, these are some great comments, and maybe we could talk about the urban designer working with the architect.
Yeah, I think, the comments, and this is going to be written as well, so.
Let me ask you guys a question regarding the color of the 2 units. If they're colored sort of the same color to show that it's in the same sort of project in itself, wouldn't from the front, could it be read almost as a large, massive house?
I think it will, yeah.
Would it be better to maybe each house have its own color identity in a sense that they would sort of read as individual houses, therefore they wouldn't be massed almost all together?
Yeah, I think if it's the same color, it needs to be different hues, as I pointed out, but maybe different
yeah,
colors.
I mean, I'm okay with the mixing of the 2 colors, but maybe it makes more sense if each house has a color identity in itself and contrasting from each other instead of trying to be one project together, I guess. Maybe we can suggest that as part of the color scheme.
Do you like the color scheme that's
I'm okay
presented?
with it. I think it's a way that he was exploring on playing with the planes of it. And I mean, after he explained it, I wish you had a little more meat to the to the argument. But I was okay with what he was saying and breaking up the masses, and that's how he was exploring it. So I'm not too against that part of it, but maybe thinking it further, maybe it makes more sense if each house on the lot has a different color, I guess, to it. Maybe that makes more sense from the street.
I agree with that. I also like to encourage, when you work with the applicant, just try to figure out whether, maybe one unit can have hips and one can have gables. Maybe the street one can have gables, because gables tend to make the building feel taller. But because when you look at the elevations of this sheet right here especially, gables seem to work better because you have less height and you have less impact. So that's one thing that I would definitely look at. Try to make there's a consistency issue, but there's also a scale issue. So I kind of like to encourage both.
I think that was a great suggestion about taking a look at the garage and providing a tandem to try to free up some of the footprint of the site. I think that's a great recommendation.
Does anyone want to entertain a motion at this point? Before Ms. Reich wanted to project.
Yeah,
Yes.
may I read back to you some of the suggestions so you have a confidence that we got all of the items? I think there seemed to be agreement to have more meaningful variation in plane and articulation, particularly on the second floor. But it was pointed out that there are some areas that have very small variations in plane, that those should be more meaningful, and that will help enhance the massing and make it more compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. Just as an aside, perhaps a suggestion, we're also hearing two different ideas in regards to the color. On the one hand, a notion that the color emphasizes the massing. On the other, perhaps each unit or structure should have a different color. Suggestion would be, once the variation in plane were a little bit more meaningful, that the massing would have a little bit more identity and the color could be make more sense to use to enhance the massing. So it sounds like perhaps you'd like to give the architect a choice to see which works better. In any case, it should be a change in hue or a subtle change in color. We heard that there should be overall a consistency of detail. If corbels is used in one area, in a similar condition, corbels should be used, etc. And then we also heard about the roofs, that there shouldn't be a combination of hips and gables. One suggestion was that one structure could be gables and one could be hips. There was also a suggestion to move Unit A, shift it to provide some additional landscaping and reduce the paved area in front of the structure, the garage rather, and to find strategic ways of reducing the parking area and the garage, perhaps more use of tandem as allowed by code.
I have a thought. Are we going in the direction, or are we suggesting that staff should handle these issues that have just been enumerated? Because I'm of the feeling that there's a lot there, and that I don't think that staff at this point really should be. There's a lot there. I would prefer seeing it one more time to see if some of these subtle things have done, especially on something which is 2 units on a lot. I think it's too much, in my opinion. Not that I don't think staff is fabulous, but I think that's what we're in place to do, review these changes as a commission.
How does the rest of the board feel about that?
I agree with that. I think once we've listened to it and sort of added up, and then there's a lot of changes that kind of one affects the other, and it's a combination of things, and maybe it is better if they did bring it back for us to look at.
I can support that. I think that seems wise to me. There are a lot of things that we're asking.
Especially with the bulk and the mass and the shifting of the buildings.
Sorry, Franco.
Sorry.
I mean, there's a lot there. When you just read the list, it just starts going, it's a lot.
I agree with you, yeah.
I think if we are going to do that, it would be nice to get a colored site plan. We understand the contrast between the footprint and all the edges. I was having a hard time understanding the site plan, so I left it to Mr. Ainsworth to sort of go there and make his comments, but it'd be a lot easier for me to document it.
So would that be
I'll support a motion if you want to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to return for redesign with the conditions and the comments that we've made.
I will second that.
This is roll call. Mr. Aliano,
Yes.
Mr. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Insua,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Franco.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next case is 1-PDR-2007-093-B, which is 2621 Piedmont Avenue, right down the street from the property that we just discussed.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Next case presented before you is 1-PDR 2007-093B, located at 2621 Piedmont Avenue. Applicant is proposing to replace an existing single-family house and one-car garage with a new two-story single-family house and two-car attached garage. The applicant has modified the house such that the floor area will be 2,120 square feet. There will be approximately 1,020 square feet on the first floor and 1,100 square foot on the second floor. The new garage will be 430 square feet. The total proposed floor area will be 2,550 square feet. This project is being heard for the second time for final review. It was last heard on October 25, 2007, where board recommended to come back to return for redesign. I will quickly go over the board's comments that were made on October 25th. One was to establish an architectural style and be consistent throughout. The proposed house has elements of ranch style, though unlike most ranch homes, the proposed house is a two-story house. Siding and window revision in size and pattern are more consistent with ranch style. In front of you, you see the old plans that were initially proposed and presented. This is the new ones. There were also some comments also made by the board for the applicant to consider. One was to provide sidings throughout the house. The applicant has provided horizontal sidings throughout the house. Second one was setting the second story in. The roof forms and articulations have been modified on east and west elevations. These would be these two. Study windows and their placements. Aluminum clad windows are being proposed. The placement of the windows appears to be more thought out. Windows have been added to the west elevation and the window sizes have been modified. And the last comment was to further develop details. The details have not really been further developed. Staff has two comments. I will go over those quickly for you. One is to retain the river stone wall at the front of the property with a maximum wall height of 18 inches above the grade to comply with current code requirements. Second one is the modest revisions provide improvement to the original proposal in that the style is more consistent throughout and the modification to the roof elements represent improvement on the east and west elevation. The window size configuration and placement also appear to be improved. If there are any questions, I will try to answer for you. The applicant is here. I also know that for some of you this may be the first time seeing it.
Are there any more questions for staff? Thank you.
Thanks.
With that, we'd like to open the public portion of the hearing, and we have the designer here, Salpi Manukyan. Please approach the podium.
Good evening. My name is Salpi Manukyan, and my office is at 2310 West Magnolia Boulevard in Burbank. This is a very small lot, and the house is also very small. and if we try to put a single-family residence in a multifamily zone, it does have a semi-covered courtyard in the back, and the ground level is basically living spaces, and the second floor is bedrooms. We also developed some other new elevations. I'm not sure if Gabrielle has them. We will. We tended to. Yeah, that one.
Do you want me to put
Yeah,
them
I
up?
like. Yeah, I want to show those as well. The style is more contemporary style. The new elevations we have are more like craftsman contemporary style, rather than what we had on the old plans. We're open for suggestions on both.
Do we have any questions for the applicant and the designer? Mr. Yoon?
Just a quick question. On the layout on the first floor, when you're coming in and you're kind of going in through the dining room to get to the back of the house, what was the rationale for that, or is that a?
Actually, the dining room is kind of on the side, and it's an open plan to walk around. It's just this is
Okay.
a very small area we have to work with.
Okay, so the owners are okay with
Right.
going through the dining room to get to the back of the house, and
Right. The dining room is open. It doesn't have any walls.
well, it does on two sides, I guess. So. Okay.
I have a question. The elevations that were just pinned up, is this the final version? Is this what you're proposing at this point in time?
Yes. I like the latest ones more than the earlier one.
These are the ones you're proposing?
Yeah.
So the big change is the
Oh, you got more, you got frames around the way.
Yeah.
It's the secondary pop.
And on the front, we have a different pitch on the bedroom roof.
Garage doors changed. Doors
So
changed.
they're adding this
Yes.
garage door. So those are those are lights?
No. The panels.
So is that sticking out the same amount as the other one?
No, it's only 1 foot.
These windows, they meet minimum exiting?
Yes.
Because you're double hung, so you're bringing, by code, that light has to. Is that-
Yes. Yes.
This is the kind of, shouldn't this show up here then?
Right, this is this, I think,
So that
well,
should be.
that looks shallower than
Yeah,
that
she
one.
said it only sticks out a foot from the.
Right, and how long, where's the plan?
The plan is here. This is the latest plan, I believe.
Missing the pop-up.
Just a little,
So it's just a little.
Switches would be interesting. Here then.
just an inch. That'd be- You're missing a window here, correct? The kitchen window is supposed to be here?
No. The kitchen window is in the back. That's the rear elevation.
This is the kitchen and this window? So that would be somewhere here.
Right.
Okay.
It's going to be a high window, so it's not.
I think we can close
That
that.
shows-
We can close that one window and leave the one on towards the backyard.
Over to the sink would be good. Do we have any more questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Concludes the public portion of the hearing.
Sure. I think all in all, it's okay. I know that my colleagues here will catch things that they're comfortable with, so I'm not going to say much. I think this certainly has some improvements, especially with some of these things there. The only thing I would do, and I think that this helps with these raptor tails, although this is a little confusing here. The only thing I would suggest it on this one, but it could be incorporated here, is to break off this band here, this portion of the roof come down about 6 inches or a foot more, so that you have the break in the front eave, so that it comes here, the little roof, same angle, comes out a little further, because this is actually in front of this anyway, and then suddenly you'll get a break, and then a little break in there. I think, other than that, I think all in all is okay.
Right, because this and this on the same, but this is not on the same.
Exactly, it's behind. So you can lower that just a scotch, and then you'll break that horizontal band. But other than that, I'm in general very good with it.
So you?
This, of course, is the first time seeing it, but I think it is an improvement from the old plans. I think that they have been able to, by using the siding to connect it all together. The roof lines are looking a little better. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I don't know what that's going to really look like with the two different depths of the pop out.
Second floor?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like it yet.
It'd be
I'm
nice
sorry.
for it to be somewhat symmetrical
Yeah.
on that end.
But the only thing that making it symmetrical is I'm not too crazy about either, just because looking at the floor plan, that pop out on the bedroom, I don't know, it seems like a wasted space for that little corner to be taken away from that just to get the effect of the pop out. But there's things on the plans that seem kind of peculiar to me, but if the owner is okay with it, then I guess I can live with it.
Well, the odd thing is of course, we have these vertical lines, but then on the plan, these vertical lines don't really exist.
Right, and in that one, you're eating away at that corner, making that room really.
If I may interrupt quickly, the new elevation that we just posted up, they were brought to our attention recently, and we haven't had a chance to go over
Right.
and actually including our staff report. So it's not going to the floor plans are not going to reflect it.
Right.
They're just elevation drawings.
Yeah, I think we know where they stand on the floor plan. It's just trying to get a sense for it. But I mean, it's improved for sure.
Aliano?
I saw that already, thank you. Yeah, it's really a very nice change from the original to that one, and then I'm glad you did this because I like this one as well. Really, I think these very kind of vertical, narrow windows work very nicely, especially here in this wall arrangement here. Not sure about that window too much. Trying to figure out what that was.
It's a kitchen window.
So there's going to be a counter there. But it doesn't bother me. I think it's fine. This, I see. But actually, this will not be round.
Supports this trellis that's dashed on the bottom right.
Yeah, so we're looking at
Yes.
so there's nothing in front of the windows. When you look at it at an angle, you won't see that. It's just the way that the drawing is. So, I really like the surround. I think that works well with the hardy planks. I think it's a nice idea. And the fact that you used it all the way around, where before you were combining plaster and some of it up on the second floor. Not sure about this arrangement. I think maybe just either horizontal would be nice. You could have some lights at the top.
Or what they had on.
Yeah, I mean, this one I think works really nicely. This gets into a style that sort of seems to be foreign to this house. There's conditions like that I think you need to deal with, where that hits that. At some point, you probably won't have anything left there. It's going to be all flashing. maybe you might want to make it slightly narrower. And I'm trying to, what's behind this window?
Master bedroom.
I don't know that that window really giving you a lot, because you have windows from this side, right?
Right.
Not sure that it would hurt to just have a blank wall there. Because then you can have so many little different sizes of things that to eliminate one of them might actually help. So probably not that window there. I think you've done a nice job. I'm having a dilemma. I like all the windows, especially these vertical ones, as I mentioned. But then when you get the front elevation, you got a totally different language too. And I don't know where that comes from, because it doesn't have any relationship to this at all. This to me it seems to be like a very true sort of carry-through style. You see it. But then when you come here, there's this, there's that, and there's this. It's kind of hard to understand. I don't know. I wonder if it did something like that here. I don't know what it would do. It might not work. So that's something, if I were to say, prove it today, I would let the urban designer deal with that and see if they can figure out a way to make the language of these windows more consistent with these. Because these have it's kind of completely foreign. I don't know. You take that out, it has sort of Chicago-style windows.
And then the overall configuration as well is somewhat odd of the plan pointed out.
Yeah.
But it could be.
But overall, I think it's very nice. I think you've done a good job. So I will support it, and I would look on to urban designer to follow through on some of these.
Well, I agree with my colleagues. I think overall there's been a tremendous improvement from the first version to the second to the third. And this building really has taken a style of its own. It's somewhere between a ranch and a craftsman. Nonetheless, it's something significant in its own. It's not just a hodgepodge of this different designs kind of coming together. I think on your final version, it would be nice if you're going with the horizontal planks, and if you are going to use some hardy plank, which I assume you're going to use something like that, to use the hardy trim and the hardy soffit and so forth, and to really keep the borders of the windows as you've illustrated. The one other comment I might make is just in the beginning, in the front porch, where you have these rusticated or stone bases, which are quite nice, but inside elevation they're very thin. Beef them up, make them into nice squares, and it'll really help your entrance. It'll give it a nice scale if these become thicker in itself. And so, these trims are very nice. I would use them throughout, and that's a good language. And I think once the urban designer begins to work on this portion with you, as far as really figuring out the plan of this section right in here,
Right.
those windows will fall into place. And so overall, I agree with all the comments, and I think the urban designer will be able to work directly with the applicant on this one. So with that, could we entertain a motion?
One last question. Of course. I couldn't understand the windows. They're Anderson clad. Are they wood clad with metal?
I'll open the public hearing again. If you would approach the podium, please.
The owner wanted the wood windows on the inside and metal on the outside, so they can be weather resistant.
Yeah, no, those are great windows. All right, very good.
Thank you.
To repeat back some of what we heard, to make the window design consistent around the building, beef up the stone bases, refine the roof form in front so it's more articulated. There was a little disagreement on that, so not quite sure how to work with the applicant on that. And there was some discussion that the previous garage door was a better fit than the
lights at the top.
the latest one. Did I catch everything?
Yeah, I think Mr. Hinson had a really nice comment where there would be a break here.
The break in the roof, that's
Coming
what
out.
I was
That
referring
would be
to.
I think either way, yeah, pulling it in
Yeah,
or
I
back,
think
just a
something
break
should-
there.
Then I think a clarification on one of the comments you read back to us was that the windows, I think the way understanding it is that we like the windows, and the only ones that seem inconsistent are the one on the front
Right.
elevation.
Right.
So if those could have a language similar to what's around the house.
And of course, there's the addition of that one window on the kitchen side that's missing.
It's always the oddball window
That's right.
because of the counter height.
How does the board feel about this?
No, that one should scale back to,
This one here.
yeah.
I mean, the window could be smaller. There's too much of a,
Well, I think the vent needs to scale down
Yeah.
according to its
right,
the size of it.
yeah, or make the window smaller, either way, right? I think that, you're right, though. I think it's the problem is with this, because the hip in the gable is so small.
Right. And it's the same size as the
Yeah,
one they're using
so
in the
if you
larger
could
one.
have
So reduce the window on the west
or maybe the
elevation.
vent, or reduce the vent,
Use the
maybe.
vent.
At the end of the day, that'll resolve itself anyway, because you can't put a header in there with that opening, so it's
Yeah, you can't build
it'll
it
work
as
itself
it's
out.
drawn.
It looks like it's holding up the.
It's going to change whether we like it
Yeah,
or
I
not.
know, exactly. It's a good design. Good design. Good job.
Do we have a motion?
Sure, I'll move for approval.
So we have a motion made by Mr. Aliano, second by Mr. Insua. This will be a roll call. Mr. Aliano?
Yes.
Mr. Yu?
Yes.
Mr. Insua?
Yes.
Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Our next case is our last case. Do we want to entertain a quick 5-minute break?
That'd be great.
Because it's a commercial project and it's a larger one. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll come back.
Now.
Good evening. We are back, and our last case is 1-PDR-2007-118-P1, which is 1809 Verdugo Boulevard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As stated by you, this is our last case, but not least. It's case number 1 PDR 2007-118P1, located 1809 Verdugo Boulevard. This project is being submitted before you for the first time for preliminary review. The applicant is proposing to construct a brand new 3-story medical office building containing approximately 29,900 square feet of floor area, as well as 110 parking spaces. The project exceeds the maximum height allowed in the zone. The property is zoned C2, Height District 1, which allows up to 35 feet. However, the applicant applied for a standard variance, and that was approved by the zoning administrator back on July 16, 2007. Because of the size of the building, an initial study was also prepared, and a negative declaration completed and adopted by the zoning administrator under case number PEIF 2006-022. As stated, this property is zone C2. It is surrounded to the north by the city of La Crescenta. This is the subject property here. There is an adjoining lot that is developed with also a medical office owned by the same property owner. To the west is still the city of Glendale, and starting from this street on is the city of La Cañada Flint Ridge. And to the south of it is C3 zone, High District 3, which, as you can see, is the site of the Verdugo Hills Hospital. And to the west is are the freeways as well as a shopping center also located in the city of La Cañada Flint Ridge. The subject lot is currently developed with surface parking, as you can see from the aerial photograph. It is about 23,000 square feet in area. As proposed, the new building will mimic the design of the existing building. I guess in this case, it's a natural inclination by the architect to do this, since the adjoining lot is owned by the same property owner. However, staff feels that this is a great opportunity to maybe bring something different to this lot, and also be in contact with the surrounding area as well. So this is a great opportunity. That being said, staff has generated some comments as well as potential recommendations to the designer, and staff also appreciate that this project is being submitted as a preliminary review. This is a great opportunity for the board, as the board's comments are very important also in terms of the direction for this project to be headed. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I will be more than happy to answer them. Oh, I don't know if you'd be interested in staff going over some of the comments that staff made, some of which concerns the fenestration pattern, as well as the landscape.
I think it's a good idea to go into it. It's a larger project. It's a commercial project at a important corner. If you would go over the important ones, or not so important ones as well, if you feel they should be vented out.
Well, some of the comments that staff generated include the possibility of integrating an outdoor terrace to provide some passive outdoor area. Considering this is a sizable development, and it'd be nice to provide some outdoor area for staff as well as patients to just come out and, take a breather while waiting to see the doctors. Also, as you can see, the two lots side by side, you can tell that this lot currently has more landscaping than the lot that is being proposed or going to be developed. So staff feels that there's more opportunity to maybe provide more landscaping. Although the proposed landscaping meets code, there's definitely room to provide additional landscaping to add some interest and soften the building further. Also, the fenestration pattern could improve as well as further undulate the building elevations. This is pretty much an L-shaped building if you look from plan view. So improvements could include to the tower entry elements. It seems flat right now, so it may be a benefit to the overall design if this is projected out further to identify it a little bit more. And those are some of the comments staff made in the staff report.
And the parking that's being lost with the existing medical office building, is it being replaced, or was the existing building overparked to begin with?
That building, I believe, is overparked as well. However, the parking spaces that are located here now will be reworked and included in this lot. So that work will take place first before any construction will go on this proposed lot.
How are they planning on doing it?
Spacing, or I believe.
That's a lot of parking space.
I believe there's extra parking because due to the proximity to the hospital, parking requirement is different. As opposed to being 5 per thousand, it's 3 per thousand. If a medical office is located within 500 feet of a lot containing a hospital. The Verdugo Hills Hospital is located about 100 feet away.
Are there any more questions for staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'd like to open up the public session of the hearing. However, I don't have any cards. Does the applicant want to speak regarding the project? Yes. If you would, state your name, come on up to the podium, state your name, and then afterwards fill out a card and present it to staff.
Oh, yes.
You don't need to do it now, but afterwards.
Yes, I will.
Proceed.
I'm Song Lee. I'm an applicant and also project manager. My office 1777 Ventura Boulevard, Suite 214, Woodland Hills, California 91364. The design is based upon four major factors. One is balance with neighbor existing building, and second is how to get good tenants, and third, how to overcome construction cost, and fourth, how to make good cash flow. This is an income property, so we have to focus return on investment as well as providing good building to the community. If you have any question, please. So, also, I came with my the architect, and it's Mr. Bang. And if you have any technical question, is Mr. Bang will reply, answer to you, and any general question I will answer to you.
And your name again, sir?
Song, S-O-U-N-G.
Very good. Do we have any questions for Mr. Song before we ask?
Yeah, just a quick question. On the 4 parts that you're talking about, the points that you just mentioned, could you go a little bit into each one and tell me how that affected your design, please?
Yes. First, the balance of I build the building with other existing building. This one is one address 1809 Verdugo Boulevard, and there's 2 separate lots. Lot 1 is existing building, about 36,000 square foot. And the new second lot 2, actually there is currently is parking spaces, and we're going to build a new medical office building, 29,900 square foot, with 110 parking spaces. This one is we have to coordinate because this lot 2 owner also owned 50% of the lot 1, 52% of lot 1 property. So actually, we built a second lot, a new building, and we try to coordinate with the existing building. Is a balance, and landscaping. Look like we focus only one lot 2. We have very small open space, but you incorporate this lot 2 into lot 1. Overall, we have very good open space. So please consider that landscaping is issue. I would like to ask you to consider lot 1, lot 2 together.
I have a question on that note. Are they separate APNs? Are they 2 separate parcels with separate tax ID numbers?
Yes, 2 separate tax ID numbers.
And the new building that's being proposed is being designed within its own separate lot with its own separate setbacks and so forth?
Yes, separate lot, yes.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Song?
You said that this lot is approximately 23,000. The new square footage is 29,000. The existing building is 36,000 square feet. What is the lot size of the other one?
That around 36,000 square foot, the lot size. And the building size more like 38,000. I'm sorry, this is not 36,000, but 38,000.
38,000?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question. I was trying to understand. So the relationship between the new building and the existing building, I'm trying to understand how, because you're showing a plan on 8.1.1 where the parking, that the driveway is basically shared by the parking of the existing building.
Yes, existing building and the new building share all parking spaces.
But also the ownership of Lot 2 has 50% ownership of Lot 1.
52% of ownership
52.
of the building, existing one. Yes.
Okay, and because of that, you're able to have a relationship.
Yes.
Like
be able
a
to
common
use this.
driveway.
Yes.
Now, how does that, and I'm not sure what code-wise, in terms of lots, can you put a driveway, where would the lot line be? Can you share a driveway for 2
is it an
different
easement?
properties?
I would assume you need an easement.
Yes, yes. Lot 2 has easement over Lot 1. That's why.
So, okay. All right, well, I'm going to assume that legally everything is fine.
Legally it's fine. Yes.
I was just curious. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Song.
Thank you.
Would the architect like to share some thoughts with us as well? Again, state your name for the record and then fill out a card and hand it to staff afterwards. state your name for the record and then fill out a card and hand
Oh, I
it to
see.
staff afterwards.
Afterwards. Sir?
Afterwards.
I have to be a bit. I'm sorry.
We'll talk louder.
Yeah, my name is Trey Bong, and I'm an architect. And let's see. Before we go ahead, the design review, I'd like to ask some questions,
It's okay, we can try. Sure.
There's one more.
Oh, I got a different one. Go ahead. You need it.
This job, I was not involved from the beginning. I was just helping from the behind. And I just got take over from the design review. So I have a lot of questions. And we try to make some, we try to arrange some meeting with the step planner and the urban designer, but we cannot, they are too busy, so we cannot make an arrangement. So I'd like to ask some questions, like, do you have that report, the recommendation? Yeah. Items, 271, the reduce of the side of building footprint, increase the front setback and like outdoor terrace space. These items, should be addressed and agreed before sending to the, this design review. I think it's my opinion, from my experience. I think this is something like the other way around. And another thing is, item 345. It's not clear for me, so I'd like to ask, the case planner to explain to me before we go ahead, the design review.
Just for clarity purposes, the sheet of paper that you handed us has items 2, 7, and 1.
3.
And items 3, 4, and 5 at the bottom.
There is a penetration pattern, and perhaps alter the height of the second level and versus to third level windows. What does it mean?
Since this is a preliminary design,
Yeah,
it's really constructive dialogue of what we're trying to do, and I think in that process, it may get some of these questions
It's an simple office building, 2-story office building.
I can.
I don't know what.
Well, the intent of today's hearing.
Could you speak a little
Yes, the
louder,
intent
I
of today's hearing is to actually talk about the massing and the bulk and the overall building design and how it would fit in the surrounding context. And so what we asked of you as the architect is to first present the project to us, walk us through circulation, vehicular, pedestrian, and so forth. And then in the process, we could better understand your design, and then we could have staff perhaps meet with you specifically to address some of your questions that you've provided.
This item is, he specifically says over here, height variance, second floor and the third floor.
If I may speak to that.
Of course.
Thank you. Sir, thank you for speaking about those items. We're always glad when our staff reports are read. The planning team was using the staff report really as a way to start a conversation about the design. We don't put forward those as complete comments for you. They are meant as we haven't studied the design, we haven't talked with you yet, and so we wanted to do our due diligence to put forward to the board the kind of things that we would talk with you about as the project moves forward. So those are really just friendly notations. They're not specific recommendations for any conditions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another thing is, this job is almost more than 2 years old right now. And I submit this, I don't know why preliminary or final review. Preliminary review, I submit the beginning of September. It's almost 6 months. All this should be discussed before, before submit over here.
Well, I think what we could do today.
Minor item is okay, but like building footprint and the front setback, those kind of things, this change whole design.
Well, also, that's why I stated in the...
It's been 2 years. It's been sitting on the planning department a year and a half.
Sir, your name again, sir?
Yes.
Your name? What is your name again, sir?
Trayvon.
Trayvon?
Yes.
Trey, on the side of the...
That's right here on the title block.
Very good. Mr. Bang, I'm going to speak very loudly so you could understand us because I know there's a issue with the hearing.
Yeah.
The DRB process has 2 phases, a phase 1 and a phase 2. Phase 1, which is what you're here today, illustrates the board's willingness to work with you in the overall massing, bulk, and the design of the project. Once those things are worked out, then the architect moves towards a more detailed plan and a more detailed elevation and a more detailed section of the building. And so today's intent of today is to take some of the staff's comments, to take some of the board's comments, so you could use that as a backdrop and as you are modifying your design over the coming weeks and months to understand what our viewpoint is as the city. And also, this also provides an opportunity for the community to come out as well. Now, there have not been any cards that have presented to me yet, so you're lucky in that sense in that you're only going to get input from the city and there's no real opposition for the project. As far as the timing, you submitted it in September, and we could let staff talk about the larger context of this project and why it takes more time for it to go through it, which we will. But I think it's a better use of your time today to perhaps walk us through your design so we understand your thoughts and ideas. And so we could share with you our thoughts and ideas. And so therefore, when you come back and you work with the urban designer, you'll have a better use of your time today. Does that make sense?
I understand that you mentioned the urban designer. That also should be, we should meet the urban designer before this hearing.
Mm-hmm. And the urban designer, I'm sure, is going to make some recommendations and could meet with you afterwards today to set up a meeting, in which case you'll have the input of this group, and then you'll have an opportunity to work with her directly. And so that's what I think would be the best course of action for this evening, is to explain to us your design, or perhaps Mr. Sung could explain the design to us more specifically with circulation and so forth.
Yeah, today we are here to listen your comment and your question, and we try to answer. And then that is a more preliminary review. So please go ahead, any comment and question, please.
Great. Because I have some questions that pertain to the circulation of the site as far as traffic and car vehicular access and so forth, which the drawings are very vague on. So if you would, do you prefer you or the architect to come up here to talk to us?
About the traffic, we already went through the transportation, all the parking layout and egress.
That's fine, sir, except the issue is we have some questions,
yes,
and this board is the first time that we're having the opportunity to look at this design. Yeah. And since it's the first time of looking at a major commercial project within the city, you have to give us the opportunity to ask you questions. And if you're not comfortable doing that, maybe Mr. Sung could come up and to the boards up here, and so we could ask some questions. But I was more interested in finding out very general questions as to the plans themselves are a little vague to me, and I just want to find out, you access the building from Verdugo Boulevard, and then you circulate somehow into this building. And then there seems to be ramps that take you downstairs, which were not as clear in our package. And so are the other floor plans that pertain to the parking level available?
I can explain the flow of traffic.
Allow staff 1 minute to pin those up, and then once they're pinned up, we could go ahead and address those issues. Before we get to that, while he's pinning up, Mr. Insua, do you have any questions that don't require the pin-up that we could address at this point?
No, I think that I really appreciate the opportunity that it's a preliminary design for good constructive dialogue to understand some of these items, and I think the process that I'm envisioning is asking the questions, get the information as you're leading the discussion, jot them down, and then allow us to dialogue and say, is this sort of like the stuff that we were thinking about? So I don't have any particular questions yet, because I'm still waiting to hear how it all
digesting the
how it all
design
came around.
All right. Well, Mr. Sung.
My last name Lee. Lee, and the first name Song.
Very good. Mr. Lee, if you would, please, just one of you, Mr. Lee, approach, come up here if you would. And please walk us through the circulation of the site. So if a car is traveling eastbound on Verdugo or westbound on Verdugo, where they would enter the property.
We have La Tour Way and Verdugo. And so this existing building is the traffic goes La Tour Way and an entrance, egress, ingress here. And also under this building, existing building, there's underground parking, about 36 parking spaces on the ground. And that one goes this way, and the Verdugo egress, ingress.
So both entrances are ingress and egress?
Yes.
And both entrances will be used by the new proposed building?
No, new proposed building is only Verdugo egress, ingress.
I see. And so you only have an easement to use that portion of the site between the two buildings to access your building?
Yes.
The new building. Got it.
And so egress, ingress right here, and then car inside go all the way, go this way,
Yes.
and go this surround, circulate.
Is that, and is this is the portion that I'm confused
Yeah.
on. Is this portion open to the sky? Is this an open driveway?
It's a driveway.
And is there a
Ground.
building over it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, so it's going
Yes.
underneath the building?
Yes.
And then going down a ramp?
Yes.
And then you end up somewhere there? And I think it's Mr. Insua is pointing out that they were mismarked, and that was very confusing. So,
The way the circulation goes, if I may cut to the chase,
Thank you.
is that we come in here, here's our common driveway. We come in here, we turn across this way, and we go down one level to level B1. So B1 is going down, the circulation comes in, and then B1, and then it breaks, and then we go down to level B2, which actually ends right here, and you have a turnaround.
so there's two levels of subterranean parking?
Correct.
Yes.
Level B1 and B2, not upper level, lower level. B1 and B2 is the way it's identified. Okay.
Okay, and this parking that is proposed on the ground level, one level down, and then two levels down,
Yes.
is that taking into account the parking that's lost with the existing medical office building?
Yes. Also, yes, we count. Also, we on the lot one, we have surface parking space at this point. But we make underground subterranean parking, about accommodate around 40 units to relocate this parking spaces to here, and some of them under this place.
And the pedestrian entrance is this area? This is the main entrance to the
Yes, this
building?
main, yes. This sidewalk right here.
Can you help me understand? You have a new driveway right here.
Yes, this only egress only.
Okay, so we're at grade level here.
Yes,
So we're at grade level here, and you come here,
yes.
and it's exit, you're saying?
Yes, only
But-
exit.
But it's exit at the very bottom one here, because your elevation's gone down?
Yes.
Okay, so then, so once you hit the bottom floor, you can egress right
Yes.
here? Okay. all right,
Make
so-
right turn only.
Okay.
It's a make right turn, yeah, from here is a make right turn only. And this one is,
Are you sure that'll work?
No,
Because,
that's not quite working out.
yeah, because this is the elevation that we're looking at here, correct? This elevation here, this elevation here is this elevation here, correct?
elevation, different elevation.
No,
That's-
but the face of this building is the face right here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're saying.
Excuse me, let me explain. This level is ground level parking,
Yes.
and this one is below, and this another room below. And we enter from here, existing basement parking, and we enter from below this, and this ground level
So the
parking.
second level of X.
And this one is ground level. You have to turn back this dead end over here. And below, we have a basement parking. We don't have that. Yeah, this is basement parking underneath this one.
So that's a new subterranean parking structure that
Yes,
you're adding under?
that's a new one. It's a new subterranean.
I see. And so when you basically come in, you drive through
Yes, they then go below.
and then go below again
Yeah.
to come out.
And this is coming out, only exit on this level.
Mhm.
That's a transportation department suggested. We had a two left in and out.
And so this parking that's being replaced, this parking,
Yes,
you're
existing
actually
surface
putting
parking.
into this subterranean parking
Yeah,
area?
and we put another surface parking.
That answers my question,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
So once you reach the bottom of the parking, is there a turnaround? You just get in-
And another thing is Mr. Dong,
Yes.
he mentioned, this, I don't know, item, which item. Because of the setback, we don't have any room, to project this tower. We have, to make that one, we have to set them more this, push this back. That's our problem.
Right?
If the city wants, more setback, then I have to work out, we lose some parking over here, this one.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. Bang?
What is the existing setback on the existing medical office?
This setback,
Right. What is the existing setback? This setback.
that one is about,
10 feet?
it's not a 10 feet, about 8, 9 feet.
So about 3 or 4
This
feet
is
more
about,
than that one.
this is more than, actually over here, 6 feet. This one is not 5 feet, it's 6 feet right now.
So about 2-3 feet then. Less than the other one.
Any other questions, Mr. Yu?
No.
Mr. Isuro?
This is design review, so I'm just going to focus on design review, but I see some challenges for you in the parking layout concerning clearances, entries, that will come out as the project develops in construction documents. So, but it
And we
doesn't-
could share with that, we could opine on that during the discussion, but at this point, do you have questions?
No,
for
sir.
him? That's it, we have no more questions. We're
Yes.
going to close the public hearing unless there's other people that want to speak,
Mr.
and then
Simoy?
we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Can I speak one last word about the traffic flow?
I'm going to open the public hearing.
Yeah.
You have 1 minute. Please try to conclude and to go through your process quickly.
Yes. We had two variants permit. First permit is transportation is a question about egress, ingress from the Verdugo Boulevard to what a new building. And that time is we hired Kimley Association. That helped us traffic flow. And transportation division is Mitchell, he approved. And so we got a thorough review about the traffic flow. That's we got the variance, egress, ingress from the Verdugo Boulevard. So I would like to mention that one. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding this project? Nope.
There's only two people there.
I close the public session, and so now it's time for us to discuss the project. Mr. Yu, do you want to start?
Do I dare? Huh? Couple of things. First of all, I sympathize with you in the sense that you feel sort of angry coming into this process, and that I guess in whatever, I don't know what exactly you went through to get to the point of us actually reviewing your project, but it sounds like the two variances that you went through, along with getting your drawings ready to submit to the design review board, and a couple of delays during the holidays and those kinds of things, extended out the time period. I think that we definitely need to look at the process to make sure that it is a little more efficient in a sense, but there are certain things that the project needs to go through in a certain time period, because it is a complex project. It is not a single-family house sitting on a single lot. It's a little more than that, and so the process that you did go through will hopefully create a better project for the city and for the people that live here. And it's not, believe it or not, to torture the architect or torture the owner of the lot. And I hope that you will maybe step back from the situation you're in now and maybe take a look at that part of it. And at the end of this process, hopefully, is our goal to have a better project. And in that sense, we thank you for bringing it as a preliminary project, because it gives us a chance to look at it. And I agree, you should have been able to meet with somebody to be able to maybe get a clearer direction on some of these issues. And I think that with the new format that we've created for the design review board, there will be more chances for other applicants to be able to go through the planner and get a sense for those things before you come to this point. And now we turn to the project, and a couple of the things. You've shown a couple of compact spaces on the lower level. I don't think that's allowed in the city, so we need to go with full-size parking on all of those. Just a key thing. The building itself, I understand you're mimicking the existing that's adjacent to it, and so you're trying to get the same look to sort of work together as a building. And I can understand that for the mass of the building, but I think there's a couple of lost opportunities in the sense that the stairwells that you have, the ones in the back, the one on the side, those things I think could become a little more articulated and become something a little more special than instead of just little towers that mimic the main building, so that it just looks like a big mass. And if you look at the existing building, it kind of does that a little bit by taking some of the shapes and curving them sort of in a Corbusish style, I guess, on the staircases. So it becomes a little bit different on the building. And so I would say take a cue from that and maybe look into the circulation becoming something a little different on this very horizontal building. Also on the main entrance, the little tower that you've created that kind of pops out, I think it's a foot on the facade. I would recommend that you possibly take a look at that. I know that square footage and maximizing is what you need to do to make the client happy and to make the project, I guess, more profitable. But right now, it's sitting sort of 5 feet from the property line, while the other one is sitting a little further back, allowing a little more landscaping to happen between the sidewalk and the building. I would say take a look at that, maybe push it back a little bit more, and in doing so, will allow your sort of vertical circulation marker to have a more pop-out dimension, and therefore you'll be able to better mark the entry and give a little more character to the building in that sense. So I would say take a look at those, and then now the entry that's coming in between this very prominent sort of axis that you've created with these two buildings, it seems to be really close to the existing. Is there any way to maybe create a bigger opening to allow a little more landscaping buffer between the road and the actual building?
Right now, it's about 30 feet.
Sir,
Sir, we cannot have cross
Sorry,
conversation.
I shouldn't have formulated it as a question. I'm sorry. But I would say maybe take a look at that and see how this area here, there's some landscaping buffer between these two buildings, but I think this area becomes very congested with so many cars going in and out of there that may be allowing a little more space this way by pushing this out a little bit. Be a recommendation. I think that's good for now.
Mr. Insua?
Okay. We have terrific staff here, and I've said that for the last 5 or 6 years because I believe it. And when we look at a project real quickly, we have less than sometimes a week to look at it, and we don't have the opportunity which you indicated we need and you want, and you're going to find great resources with our staff. They are just terrific. They've seen our process for many years now. They get to the heart of those issues really quickly. At the same time, when I read staff recommendations, especially from Bong, I get it real fast. And when they say something, I'm sensing it too, because it's a feeling that you get. And first, I want to thank the whole design team for submitting this as a preliminary. That's a great opportunity to make this project and continue to make this project a very good project at a very important part of the city of Glendale. That's such an interesting area where you can nestle in a hospital, medical center, and still retain the wonderful feeling of the transition between Glendale and La Cañada and Descanso Garden. It's just a beautiful area. I've always liked that area. That's probably why my kids were born up there. And you made a great statement when you first started, an opportunity to improve. And I believe that this building has the opportunity to improve and also enhance this corner, both the existing building, this new proposed building, and the entrance, which reads as one now complex. So now we have a complex, not just a standalone building, but a complex. The first thing I would suggest that if we go to drawing A-1.0, which is right here, see if I can find my site plan. These two buildings now, especially as how your design direction is to incorporate some of the design elements of the existing building, I believe that there's a wonderful opportunity to allow this to be a prominent gateway, if you will, for this complex. Not just a real simple driveway with landscaping up against it here, but I think there's an opportunity to capture a gateway feeling to the medical office center, which we now are creating here. And I think this needs to explore something. A thought that came to mind, they're a bit dated now, although the design is what I'm getting at, is a space frame, a canopy, with lighting, with a color scheme that ties both buildings in, with an architectural language, something that says this is the primary entrance to this complex. I think if you look across the street, the Verdugo Hills Hospital has really successfully over the years been increasing their design presence on that site. It used to be a little bit, there's the hospital. Now they're trying, I like the way they're incorporating a lot of the design cues. So the first thing I would say is, as your design intent is to incorporate some of the design elements of both buildings, think of incorporating a central theme which makes this now, this common driveway, the gateway to this entrance. Very important here. I think that everything in life has proportion and scale. And when you look at it, if it's proportionally and in scale and it's done well, it feels comfortable. When you look at the front of this elevation of this building, there's a proportion and a scale that's being told here, and a proportion and a scale that's being told here, and there's a proportion and scale being told here. But look how tiny this entrance is, both on its vertical plane, in scale. Imagine a canopy if we wanted to go through that. Imagine differentiating the entry with a horizontal band that says, I'm an entry here, only in this plane. But I think that if we look at the floor plan or the site plan of that, this entry doesn't work proportionally. This stairs is 5 feet wide. This ramp right in front is also 5 feet wide. That 5 feet is right there. This is a major 2,200 square foot office building. That's your primary entrance for the pedestrians at the front. It doesn't seem proportionally in scale to have the small little steps going up to the front of this little entrance, which when you open the door, you got 5 feet, and there's your sidewalk right there. I believe it needs to be set back. At least at this entrance, it needs to be set back so that there's, when you're walking out of your office and you're with your family or whatever, you're not right smack in the middle of these stairs and these ramps. It needs to have it what they call like a little vestibule or a narthex or something there where you're allowed to breathe a little bit. But I personally don't think that this is the right place for this entrance. I think when we incorporate some of the staff's comments, I think there's a better place for this entrance that will allow a prominent entrance and also proportioned scale, and fixes some of the problems, and I think you'll also save money in some of these ramps that you have to incorporate. My thinking for this entrance, and I sketch a lot, I guess that's what we all do, because it helps me flesh out ideas. This is not for you to do, this is just for me to remember as I dialogue with this. I see the entrance, when you look at our floor plan, which hard to read. It's hard. See, you have to struggle to see where is the entrance, where is this building's primary face. So if I'm trying to figure out where is the entrance here, down there, this one, first floor. To the left. First floor, right there. That one. Oh, right here. Parking. Correct. Parking. But actually, let's go to this first floor here. If you notice, the first floor elevation is right here, and you have to build steps to go up that elevation because your entry is right here. What if we move the entrance closer to this area here? Your steps would be smaller because, look, we're getting closer to the entry, and your ramps would be smaller because you're getting closer to the entry. I suggest that on this floor plan, which is right here, this is your entry right here. You forget this. This could be a lobby, if you will, for the elevators, which has to be rated anyway, if you keep them in that orientation, but that the entry is right here. So that you have stairs, steps that go up here, they're gentle, and then tuck the ramp up against the building back here. You're even rising in elevation so that the ramp doesn't break out the element of this building. Tuck the element of the ramp back here, and also you create a nice little patio, a nice little entry, so when you come out, people can wait for their families. They can wait, and you have a place to wait. So I suggest that in this area, this becomes the entry. So this is a tool for me. When I look at this, I see this panel right in here, from here to here being the entry. Darker material or whatever glass or whatever curtain wall glass, but that underneath here is now the entry, so that when you come into the site, this area right here is the entry. It works in the floor plan, and then you create a prominent entrance to the front of the building, where now that's my entry. There's in relationship to my gateway, and then you have a proper way to come into this site. I would also say you may want to tuck this entry or whatever, and then work on your landscaping there. And then in closing, when I look at this elevation, this is open, and then this is open, into the parking garage. I think that if you used a screen material that was open enough, by code you're allowed, so you have air transition between inside and outside, you'll get a little bit more of this dark banding that you're achieving here, and you'll eliminate these columns and you'll continue the dark banding there. So I'd say that this should be a proper entry. Tuck it back a little bit so you have a way where people have a place to sit down, and not make this your entry because it's too close to the sidewalk. So those are my initial preliminary comments for what I see.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Mr. Aliano?
Thank you. Very, very great, very good comments.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have to say anything.
Oh, no.
I really appreciate the fact that the design is coming at a preliminary level. Although, when I look at this document, there's quite a bit of work here already done. It's fairly worked out. And I suspect what happened, this was submitted, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was submitted and the staff did a report to come before us today. And I have to say, this is a very detailed and very nicely done report. A lot of the things in here I agree with 100%. So I don't know how to deal with it because it almost seemed like this document should have been a very, very thin document with perhaps maybe even a sketch level to show site plan variations, 1 or 2 variations, 3, because the site planning here on this scheme is extremely important. The other aspect of the project is the massing, which is also very important, but you have to get past the site planning first in order to deal with massing at a detail level. And it sounds like you've had some conversation with Mr. Mitchell, and you've had some conversation with the city already in terms of how to circulate through the building. And I think that's all positive. But I'm kind of torn because when I look at drawings like this, they almost look like working drawings. I get kind of nervous because what we're asking is really to think at a conceptual level rather than at a detail level, which is what this phase is about. So, and I think that's just the nature of the beast, and we have to just deal with it.
I think actually one reason why it's like that is because they went through the variance process. And when they do
They
that, they have to get
good
very
point.
detailed about
Yeah,
all of those
that's a
things.
good point.
Good point. Because I went through a variance process and I understand.
Good point.
Yeah, because you're trying to prove something, but it can change from this. It doesn't have to stick with this. But anyways, having said that, I have to reiterate that I read the report, and a lot of the things in here make a lot of sense to me. Now, because we're a design review board, I'm going to focus on all the design issues and assume that a lot of these technical things can be worked out, the way you come in through the parking and all that. I want to start out by saying that I think the notion of, and I hope I don't offend anybody, the notion of trying to mimic these large structures in the area, like the hospital and the building next door, I think, to me, that's a mistake. I think it's a huge mistake. These buildings, to me, are not exemplary buildings for what we need to do today in this part of Glendale. They were fine for the time that they were done, but there are different forces acting now, and I think we need to think at a different level. So I think I would say don't try to mimic what's there. In fact, it is what it is. The building next door is what it is. It's a pretty massive building already, and to add another massive building next to it to sort of be in harmony with that, to me, I think is not the right direction. So what I would do is try to figure out a way to give this building a language that's a little bit lighter, perhaps contrasting the mass of the existing building next door, and use that as a way to generate another building that contrasts that building that has more to do with today rather than when these buildings were built. These are, the building next door is pretty much a very stripped down version of a modern building. I mean, if you can imagine stripping down a modern building even more. So I would just sort of move away from that. This, to me, is a really, really great site. It's a wonderful place to do a nice project. And I think this will be a nice project. I don't I don't doubt that. But again, we need to sort of have this dialogue and see what can be done to give the applicant a project that's going to be successful financially, and to give the city and the community a building that's also visually successful and in terms of an environment that's created for this area. This part of Glendale, because of the theater and the Starbucks and the restaurants there.
I did that.
Goldstein's,
that
yeah,
bunch of
Goldstein's
buildings
there.
years ago.
I mean, this to me, I think for a freeway sort of area with its overpasses and all this stuff, it's probably a pretty exciting place to be. You know, you would never imagine that these buildings in the midst of a parking lot with freeway running over it would be so well used, but they are. I mean, the little patio Starbucks is always full of people. And it's a really great intersection because of the ramp. People come out, and people come this way and that way, and this becomes a really nice sort of node for this part of Glendale. So, for me, in terms of how to design the site for this building, is that you have to address what everyone has already addressed, is the space between this building and the new building. And then the other thing that needs to be addressed is this corner here. Because of the slope, this corner is very prominent as you go easterly and also as you come out from the ramp. And so that needs to be, there needs to be a special feature there. Perhaps, you know, something that happens in plan that could be expressed externally. So I'm looking forward to see what could be done there. And the fact that the site has this kind of a sort of shape already starts to suggest that something more dynamic could happen there. Because you don't have a regular lot. You don't have a square or a rectangular lot. You have basically a wedge type of shape site that could start generating some interesting forms. You know, as people zoom by or speed by this ramp, they get to Pasadena, you know, this elevation here could be quite interesting as one drives. It doesn't have to be the back of the building. It could be, it could be something else. So I would address that, and I would address this corner, and again, to reiterate, I would address the way these two buildings go together. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is the way the building sits in terms of the various levels and what we're actually seeing. For a two-story building, we're seeing a lot of parking. I really like your suggestion about trying to move the entrance to the corner because it does eliminate a lot of this stuff. What I would like to see, and the staff report talks about a 2.7 parking ratio rather than a 2.0, which reduces the number. My calculations say 120 total parking spaces. Is that correct?
Well, it's based on parking for general office building, which is 2.7 per 1,000,
right,
based on 90% of the floor area. So you take the total floor area times 0.90 and divide it by 330.
But you came up with about 29 plus or minus less parking spaces needed if you went with that ratio.
Yes,
which
correct.
Basically that eliminates almost 2/3 of one deck of parking. This deck of parking here has 40 spaces. So what I'm getting at is that if there's a way to kind of either bring this building down so that it starts to kind of follow the side is doing this is much higher here, the building can start doing that rather than trying to maintain this sort of constant line. That might be better, I think. And the key, I think, is in the parking, the way you handle the parking. And if there's a way to reduce the number of parking, that would be great. Perhaps, maybe you could step this. Maybe there's actually offices here, and this could become more of something like that. Because I think there's a need from this corner here for this to be less tall. Even though there's there's the overpass here, you're still approaching, you come down this ramp, you're right there. And there's not really a lot of pedestrian here, traffic, but I think it's still a very visible corner. An experience sort of as if you were a pedestrian, because you come up the street, the road here, and you enter in this location here. When you make this turn, the building is right at that corner. And so for something that tall, I don't think that would be a pleasant experience. But I see the corner as being more of a playful piece rather than, something that's so, where's the corner? It looks like the side or the back of the building, especially with the stair being there. This exit stair. I mean, maybe the stair could be incorporated into that corner, and maybe instead of being a conventional shape, maybe it could have a little bit of a curve. It could have anything. I mean, we're not trying to design it here. I think we're just trying to give general direction of what we're expecting. So I talked about the second point, which was to address the parking. And then also, earlier I talked about the language of the building, how it's mimicking the existing building too much, I think. Not so much the hospital. The hospital has a different language, but still from the same period. I would suggest that, and there were comments in the report about the settlement as well, how the vertical element actually cuts all these horizontal lines, which I agree with. I don't think that this needs to be a vertical piece. I think if you start thinking in terms of terracing, the building, so you address this corner, and this portion of the building is lower, you start getting horizontal lines that start to maybe even stagger back at this corner, and you start stepping up. So now you're dealing with horizontal planes that could actually be fairly dynamic, because these elevations don't look dynamic to me. They're very static, because of the fact that they're basically ribbon windows all the way around, and you can see it in the rendering. It's sort of a it's a diagram that's been stacked with glazing that fills space in between. So I will move away from this sort of very disciplined, approach to sort of elevating all these various views, and try to do something more dynamic. Again, in contrast to the existing building, because if this were built the way it is, it would not look that much different than what's here already. It would look like a continuation, which conceptually, initially the applicant thought that would be a great idea because you're trying to tie something to the old building. But I suspect the rest of the board feels the same way. I don't think that the existing building is doing very much for the area. In fact, it's actually quite dull. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aliano. Well, as the chairman, I get to speak last, and so I have the distinct pleasure of hearing everyone's thoughts and at the same time formulating my thoughts as well. And in this case, I think my colleagues did a great job of itemizing all the major concerns and issues. And I, too, appreciate the fact that you've come to us on a preliminary stage, and this is a great forum for everyone to share their ideas so you could understand what this board's viewpoint is and how we would approach the design of this project. And I also must comment on the fact that staff did a great job with their comments. I mean, they're very detailed, and it's a great roadmap for you to follow as you are going to be working with the urban designer in the coming weeks and months to bring this project to fruition. We've changed the system, as you know, in the last month or so, and so now you have the opportunity to actually sit down with staff and the urban designer and to go back and forth. So you're not wasting your time coming to design review board with a thought-out idea that's very detailed and find out that it's not the approach or not the general language of the design that's perceived to be the correct form or function for that area. And so I think in this case you're going to have an easy time from this point on if you follow this roadmap and you work with her closely, that she'll be able to direct you and lead you down the right path of design and so forth, which will save you time and money. One of the main features of this site, I think, is its location. It's amazing. It is a gateway. So as you're going northbound on the 2 freeway, and as you're doing the junction into 210 eastbound, you get to see this project and vice versa as well. And as you're going on Verdugo, you get to see it. So it's a prominent location. And it's important in that a well-designed building in such an area will be a well-leased building. You brought up economics, and I would encourage you to use this opportunity to come up with a good design, and that will bring in more revenue stream for you because you'll have more tenants that want to be in the unique building that has this great exposure and that has this great visibility because it's great advertisement for them to be there. And I think the building, the existing building, is reminiscent of the 1980s. I mean, it just looks like a 1980s building. And we need to make sure your building looks like a building that was designed in the 21st century. And that's the idea. The idea is to differentiate yourself. And that's an important thing for me. And I believe that these should be looked at as separate parcels. They're separate APNs. You have an easement that allows you to access this building from the other parcel, but they're separate. And you might decide to lease this building and sell it in the future. And the future owner might just have some very different thoughts as to the future of this building. So therefore, you have to look at them separately. And that's what our approach is here. And so I believe this new design should be juxtaposed with the old design. And we need to have building articulation. There needs to be a sense of entrance that's been pointed out. And we need to integrate courtyards to break up the massing, and that's very important. And by creating blocks of building, maybe with different colors, different forms, different shapes, different materials, to create this identity. And I think that's been really pointed out eloquently already, in that you have this opportunity to have A, B, C, or just A and B, and this entrance as being this focal point that brings you in, and perhaps you want to relocate the entrance. But these are all things to consider at this initial stage, and I think by integrating different materials and colors and forms, you'll be able to create some excitement, which is lacking in this current design. Also, start thinking about your signage. Start thinking about the identity of the building at the entrance, which is, again, great advertisement for you. It's a great way to create this excitement and to create a high-tech environment. And so it's a good thing to start considering now. And of course, with the landscaping, the common areas outside, start thinking about fountains, outside amenities. I think you have a great opportunity to create something here. I'm not quite sure what it is, but you could use some of this area as an outdoor area and to create that. And especially if you have something in the middle of the project as well, it will further the notion of the different blocks and the different components of this building. And so with this preliminary approach, I believe that we've given you some great feedback as to what we're looking for and what we anticipate and really seek and demand from this project because of its importance. And if you could maybe watch some other tapes of how much scrutiny are placed on homes and multifamily projects within our city, you would anticipate and maybe appreciate the amount of efforts that we're willing to put in to make this a better building as well. And so with that, I think we could maybe have some discussions internally and to maybe formalize our thoughts a little better and try to give some nice direction.
I think I wanted to piggyback a little bit on some of your comments, if I may. One thing that we haven't talked about, maybe you have and I haven't heard it, is the materials. A 29,000 square foot building made out of plaster and glass. Perhaps there's a little bit of stone at the base of the building at the entrance, but again, the staff report talks about that. It addresses materials. And the suggestion was made to use a variety of materials, or maybe to take the same material that's there and trying to use it more on a base, at the base of the building. I think something needs to be done with that. I think either you do that approach or you figure out a way to layer this building don't have to use expensive materials, but to use just plaster as the, I would say maybe 99%, no, if you consider the glass, it's probably less, but I would say most of the material is plaster, which is, it's not even plaster, it's ephes, which I think is not as nice as plaster. It's going to have the sort of plastic look. So I would suggest maybe introducing other materials. And the suggestion I made earlier about trying to make the structure lighter might actually lend itself to materials that are lighter, like perhaps metal screens, paneling systems that are very lightweight looking, things like that. I think we need to have a really fresh look at the materials and not really geared towards a sort of monolithic, massive building. So if that could be somehow put into our motion or our comments as a way to proceed forward, I think that would be great. And lastly, and this is something really off, perhaps a different direction, but it's mainly a question, and maybe something to be put out there, is that because we already have some commercial, and this is maybe it's more of a client or an applicant question for them to think about if that's something that they would like to do. There's already a commercial area here, restaurants here, another little restaurant there. I just wonder if there's a way to, when you start thinking in terms of patio and terracing this corner, there's a way to link some of this with that. For example, the people that work in this building, their office, it's an office building, they have to go to lunch. Everybody eats lunch. So if there's a way to link this building to the sort of the food service that these buildings are providing, either by creating some kind of, maybe some steps that are kind of not just utilitarian steps, but more like something more
areas
urban,
of rest,
something more
little areas of rest as you go down.
Yeah, it could be some kind of a grand stair, in a way not a similar scale, but similar to what's there's a concept of what's been done even downtown LA, where and I'm not suggesting the style of it, but just the fact that there's a stair on the what's it called?
Library tower.
The library tower building. There's a stair that kind of links all those different buildings. That's a grand scale, but this will be. But the notion of having something like that could link this building to this, because if you don't, people are going to have to go on the sidewalk and try to, go through all of this, and it's not. I don't think that will be a very pleasant experience. And what that leads me to also is that if there's a way to bring in some mixed use to this site. So again, you're linking these again in a different way. This is not just an office building, but it has some other component in it that could act as a sort of a visual component of the project at the street level. As people drive by, they see activity here rather than just an office. If you cut the parking of this level, say, to half, you could put all the parking on this level towards the back, and this could start to become more of a storefront that could accommodate some kind of mixed use. Maybe there's a gymnasium here. Maybe there's some kind of a rec center with a deck. I mean, I'm just sort of throwing things out there. It doesn't mean that's what it has to be. But the notion of bringing in just a small component that's different than the office use of the building, just to sort of tie this whole area. In the future, who knows what will happen to this building? Maybe this could become sort of a small, sort of commercial strip activity of that sort. Anyways, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Would it be useful for staff to summarize what we've heard? Well, really just to summarize the intent that we've heard, and you can correct us. It would be an opportunity for us to get a better understanding of the direction as we work with the applicant. And this is not in order of priority, but categorically, regarding site planning and context, some of the things we heard were addressing the west end of the project in a variety of ways, something very special either with open space or an architectural element that will reflect the gateway nature of the site. Also, insofar as the site is sloping down, there might be an opportunity to reduce the parking and so then slope or terrace the project down in that direction. That might relate the building to the site better and also help to achieve a level of connectivity to the commercial uses on the west. And the most recent recommendation from Board Member Aliano to perhaps consider potential for commercial uses as well to activate that and provide that connectivity. In addition, in regarding the site, we heard enhancing the entry to the site, the vehicular entry between the building with either architectural gateway type elements or perhaps landscape elements, and making the building entry itself more prominent. The other thing I think we heard very clearly when we think of the architecture is to consider doing, rather than a complement or a similar architectural treatment, a contrast to the existing building that would be more contemporary of the now, the 21st century, as we heard it. And that would maybe produce an opportunity for you to enhance the gateway nature of the site and even perhaps help the budget of the building and a way to potentially create a marketability. And so then if the building is more of an identity project, then what is that identity? How will that help you enhance your marketing opportunities and possibilities? What does that do for signage, et cetera? And so those were the general kind of comments that we heard. We heard more detailed comments about materials and so forth, but it seems like those comments actually flow from those general intents. Is that a good summary?
Maybe I missed it, but also there was a discussion about the parking. Figure out a way to make the parking less prominent on the street.
Right. Very good. Thank you we'll make sure to include that.
If the building was going to stay in its relative design, if the comments that we're making are not applied and they're successful, some of the things that I think are very much important and necessary to this building, if it stays this way, is to relocate the prime entrance to the southeast corner, setting it back to allow the opportunity for a little plaza entry, tucking the handicap ramp up against the side, and so it's not prominent. Thus, you'll reduce the required steps, and you'll create a better proportion entry and little plaza area in relationship to the square footage of the building. I think that's very important. And again, if the building was going to continue in its present design, on the exterior elevations, instead of having open parking to it, I think it'll make the building look like it's on little sticks with the columns, having a screening material that's allowed by code with the proper opening so we have air exchange. If they stay with this design, to continue accentuating the dark, the light, the dark, the light, if they stay with this design. But you don't see that open.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. We have recorded those comments, and we'll discuss the variety of options with the applicant team. We also did hear a recommendation for the potential for creating courtyards in the building to help potentially reduce the mass, the perceived mass of the building. My sense is that recommendation could perhaps be considered regardless of what material or design identity the project ultimately, the shape it ultimately takes.
Because such courtyards that would be integrated into the design ultimately lend themselves to different portions and different parts of the building, so that you could have a part A, part B, or C, and so therefore there is natural divisions that occur in the mass, and so therefore you have opportunities to use different materials, different colors, and a different scale as far as the heights are concerned, as Mr. Aliana pointed out, with the terracing of the building.
Great. I think I'm hoping that the team has an understanding. I think staff has an understanding of these really thoughtful and comprehensive comments. Thank you.
And again, what I suggest is you meet the urban planner after this meeting. You could set up an appointment or call her at some point, and then you'll be able to, I think, move along the design phase more smoothly and come back to us with a more thought out and more worked out design.
Regarding the courtyard.
We'll open the public session again.
Regarding the courtyard, this lot size is only half acre, and the next one, lot one, is 1 acre. I don't know where we're going to put the courtyard. Ground level is all parking.
Well, just to look at this, if you just look at the site plan that you have now, you have areas like this, this, and this that can become very nice outdoor spaces. That are
Yeah,
not
we can
being
put on the corner, but
Especially
not,
this one.
not on the middle.
Well,
And it's just open right now.
exactly. What if you put a hard lid on that thing, and with deep well planters and stuff, there's an opportunity for a
So,
patio.
I think those are the opportunities that we're looking for.
Yes, and another thing is, number one, you mentioned the outdoor terrace. Is this in the building level, or you're talking about the ground level?
That could be a possible
Or
option.
terrace?
It's just an idea that you could entertain, and maybe you could look into that in more detail in terms of how it works in the overall building design. So,
No, I mean, where are you going to put that? On the building level, or what?
But
Where?
Mr. Bang?
May I just add? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think this is a great opportunity to be creative. I don't think we're trying to say put it on any particular level. We're just saying it's an
No,
idea.
because,
It's an idea that you need to investigate, and I think
in report, he mentioned, on the Verdugo Road, it's a building front. We cannot put the terrace over there.
Mr. Bang, we as a group cannot tell the architect, or prefer not to tell the architect exactly what to do. You as the creative architect, as the designer, as the artist, need to come back with some ideas and work with the urban designer using your creative education and background to come up with something nice.
Yes.
Because if we design it for you, he might as well hire us. We're not getting paid for this, you are. So the idea is for you to use these guidelines, suggestions, and work with staff and come back with a general conceptual, diagrammatic layout that's very loose and that's very general. And once you identify a loose and general diagram that works, then you could develop that design over time. I hope that helps.
Yes, but the point is, I want to make sure what the step is meaning. It's something like, like say you put the terrace in the front. This project is dead. No way we can put in the front in the terrace.
One thing that, and again, these are guide suggestions, opportunities, what if. This is your skill in successfully executing this building. When staff or even ourselves make these comments, it's not written in concrete. It's an opportunity for you to explore different areas. And if you say, hey, I could not successfully put a terrace or a patio in the front of the building because my setback is 5 feet, terrific. But look at taking that suggestion and look at where I was able to successfully put one in. One that comes to mind, and you brought it out. If you notice, this is parking. Well, imagine off this elevation, wherever the floor is, this could be a potential patio elevated above the parking with a nice screen wall, with landscaping. These are great opportunities to look here as an important beacon for the building. Here, entry, circulation. These are opportunities to explore, loose. Let your opportunity to work out solutions occur on this site. And if you can't do an item that's suggested, it's a suggestion. It's not a mandate.
No, because it was mentioned over here in Verdugo Street. That's why I'm asking you, no.
But they're suggestions.
Terrace in the
They're
front.
suggestions. They're not mandates. They're suggestions.
Okay,
comments,
thank you very much.
and recommendations.
Thank you for your time.
Well, sir, you know, what I'd like to add is that, you know, I've seen this many times where...
Could you speak into the
Sure. I've seen this many times where we give, you know, a design is done, and then we give direction in general terms, and the design comes back pretty much the same as it came the first time, except there's a few little changes in the corners and so on.
No,
I think what I would do, if I were doing this, I would accept the fact that this is done, and it was done for the purpose of proving to the city that you needed a variance to make this building work. And you've done that. This is all worthwhile doing. I would just take this and put it aside for a while and just think in terms of what we talked about today and see what you can come up with.
yes, we'll
I think that's
discuss
what
with
we're
the-
asking.
the
I think that's what we're asking.
designer there.
You know, in the end, it may end up being that way. The new things that you come up with some of these that were done at the very, maybe they'll fuse together and you end up with a project that could be real. But I think for the time being, I think you need to put this aside just for a little while and see what you can come up with.
Yes, the only
That would be
thing
the
is,
best
you know,
thing.
it took
I know.
so much time,
I know.
2 years.
But this is worthwhile. This was worthwhile because you got the height variance.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes, Mr. Sung, you may come up to the podium.
I have one point.
2 minutes, please.
Because Mr. Aliano mentioned about it's possible to reduce parking spaces and more is reduce one subterranean and so on. The parking ratio requirement from city of Glendale is 2.7 per 1,000 square foot. If that's property within 500 square feet from the border or boundary of a medical building. But we have some problems. We have our own, in 1809 Verdugo, Lot 1, Lot 2, there's easement requirement there. The easement is a reciprocal easement is from Lot 1 existing building. They require certain parking spaces. So we have to provide, Lot 2 owner has to provide certain parking spaces to meet the easement requirement, parking easement requirement. That's why we spend more money to make a 2 subterranean parking space, and plus even ground level, we would like to have a commercial, but we cannot have a commercial because of the parking
ratio, right.
requirement. So please consider that point.
Right.
And if you don't mind, is actually because we have 2 week pushback, so we had thought about some kind of design. So yes, we have brought some rendering. So this is just for your reference. If you would like to see the rendering, our new.
Yes, please,
Why not?
go
Sure.
ahead and
Yeah.
give it to staff, and
Yeah.
they'll pass it out to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's your gateway.
Yeah, it was sort of is considered his point.
You know, what's interesting about this is you've done some of the things we've talked about today
Yes.
in this.
Yes.
And, you know, I could see that you've started to think about some sort of an outdoor terrace
Yes.
on the west portion. You've thought about a more prominent entrance.
Yes.
You started to consider a building and its elevation to be different than
Yes.
the existing building. You've thought about a gateway,
Yes.
and so you're capable of this. This is great. You've taken the first step
Yes.
in the right direction. And we're confident that over the process, as you work with an individual person, such as the urban planner and staff, you'll have a dedicated team that's focused to help you to improve your project, and you could go back and forth with them as many times as you feel is necessary, that come up with a project that makes economic sense for you, that in one way or another addresses the unique aspects of the site, such as the easement and the replacement of parking,
Yes.
and could come up with a design and a vision and a language of architecture that's conducive to the city. So I believe by you portraying this to us at the tail end, I wish it was presented to us in the beginning, because we could have started working off of this. But nonetheless, you'll have that opportunity to do it
To
with
listen to your
the
comment.
staff. Correct.
I really appreciate your comment, and we have a wonderful meeting, and the next time we're going to meet is Mrs. Stephanie Wright, and we have February 27 we're meeting. So
Yes,
at the
next
time,
week.
we're going to have a more exchange opinion.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Very much.
Well, that was our last case of the evening, so I think we have some minutes to approve,
Actually,
or we plan on doing
Chairperson-
that some other time.
Simonian, forgive us, but there needs to be a motion made regarding whether this project should be
Well, I apologize. It's been a
approved
long
and
night.
Proceed, I know, exactly.
We ended on such a positive note, I figured that was
Exactly.
enough to just sail through to the next meeting.
Hopefully, you can allow the project to proceed to final with comments and conditions. So.
Well, let's consider a motion as to how we think we should move forward.
Do you want to proceed to final or to another?
I think there's too many issues.
Mhm.
I think we need to get the applicant and the urban design group together for the applicant to provide some diagrammatic schemes, site planning, and general massing, and then bring that to us as a preliminary. Because otherwise, they're going to end up doing a lot of work, and I think they should hold on to this and think with a fresh start at the preliminary level before they go to this level again. Otherwise they end up spending a lot of time and money unnecessarily.
Mhm.
So I would say it should come back for redesign
At the preliminary
at a
level.
preliminary stage. And I'm perfectly fine looking at sketches. We don't need to have AutoCAD drawings. They can be very loose, just plates, massing diagrams, site plan diagrams. That would be fine with me.
I would agree.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Eliano to have the project returned for redesign at the preliminary stage with the board's comments, and a second by Mr. Insua. Roll call. Mr. Eliano,
Yes.
Mr. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Insua,
Yes.
and Chairman Simonian.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
So now we're finished with today's cases, and we could proceed to the other matters on the agenda. Do we have any minutes to approve this evening?
We have one set of minutes dated January the 24th, 2008. On all four board members were present.
Except Ivan and Sue.
Oh, forgive me, except for, yes, Robbins, not Mr. So the three board members, if you don't mind reviewing those and seeing whether or not we could approve these minutes tonight.
Has the group reviewed them?
Which day was that? Was that?
January 24th. Yes, you were present, Mr. Eliano. The cases, there was a case on Irving, a case on Andes, on Thompson, 3 items.
I don't have any objections. I think if you're comfortable. Were you?
I didn't read it, so I couldn't say.
I see.
Yeah.
Can we put it off then?
I raised my that I.
So maybe we'll just put that off until next week.
Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah.
That
I
way
promise
Mr.
to read
Yu
it.
will have a chance to review it.
We'll move it to the next subsequent date.
And so with that, we move on to oral communications. There's really no one else left in the audience, and we have no cards.
I move for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn at 8:31 p.m.
Pretty good job,
Thank you.
Chairman.